Sean Diddy Combs files another request to get out of jail. His attorney citing new evidence they claim will reveal the prosecution's
lawyers are making a bombshell allegation. They say this video of him beating ex-girlfriend Cassie was leaked by the Department of Homeland Security.
He believes he's innocent. I believe he's innocent.
I know y'all take it like, well, that was hardcore. That's cruel. But that is the game you in. I am sorry. That is the game you decided to get in.
Sean Combs is already fighting multiple sex assault allegations, each one more disturbing than the next.
I like nobody. You have to know.
His latest accuser says he was 10 years old at
I
the
don't
time.
like just to win. I want to win over and over and over. I want to be at the end of the day, I want all of us
Diddy
to
Combs'
be the best.
investigation. New surveillance video shows Combs being taken into custody in a Manhattan hotel last week.
Next, give me something else.
He took me out of a dangerous game. I mean, I was selling drugs real hard. When I got the record deal, all I got cut short. So it's like he Jesus to me, you know what I'm saying? Because he just saved me.
Can't you do it? I can do it. I can do anything.
You know, the game has been elevated. As we can tell, there's no expense being spared. We are the black billionaires lunch. Yeah, you understand? Right. And we here together, and we're gonna keep staying together. We getting tighter. What I'm saying? And united we stand. And ain't nothing else to us. Black excellence, right? Yeah.
It's bigger than religion. Hip hop is bigger than the government.
If you are here for the detailed breakdown of all the salacious, horrifying crimes of one Sean Puffy Combs, I just want to warn you up front, this video will disappoint you. I don't say that as a way to undermine the crimes and accusations toward the man. I think the things he's been accused of are very serious, and I think he did pretty much all of that shit. Allegedly, right? The things he's accused of are so serious, in fact, that I think it's actually more important for me to spend my time and energy to address them in a more in-depth and nuanced way.
Also, there are plenty of people who have gladly made videos doing it right now where it's all about the salacious details, okay, who are not doing what FD has chosen to do with this video. I haven't even watched it, but just what he said right there, where he's like, I'm going to get into like the bigger picture stuff here. This is not about like the ins and outs of the horrifying details that make up the this many civil suits and the current criminal trial against Diddy.
One thing that always happens with these types of stories, these types of events, is that everyone gets really riled up to rightfully pillory a bad guy. And going back through the history of human civilization, be it public canings or guillotines or entire towns watching alleged witches being burned at the stake, or white Southerners taking pictures of a public lynching of an accused black person, there's a kind of gross cathartic engagement that people have always had with watching someone go down. But unlike many of those situations throughout history, it's not often where everyone, no matter their ideology or background, that they can come together, sit back and say, yeah, this motherfucker had it coming. And I want to be clear, Diddy most definitely does have it coming, but I find myself needing to do more than make a video explaining that. What I think is more important is discussing how Diddy got to the status he was in the first place, and how that status protected him from pretty much well-known crimes he was committing behind the scenes to a lot of people, both physically, sexually, and financially. Sean Diddy Combs, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, he has a lot of names. I'll be using a lot of them interchangeably, is the most recent in what is sadly a growing tradition of famous, powerful black male entertainers from my era being exposed as predators and abusers as he faces federal sex trafficking charges. And this is coming off the heels of numerous women suing him over sexual misconduct and abuse allegations of various forms, with the most notable being his ex-girlfriend Cassie, to whom he paid out a $10 million settlement last year, requiring her to at least agree not to speak on her experiences with him. This did not stop a tape of him brutally attacking her in a hotel hallway from being released to the public, which had the effect of finally, after literal decades of people saying he was a bad guy, being seen as a bad guy in hip hop culture permanently, facing the same fate as Bill Cosby and R. Kelly before him after their crimes were exposed. By the way, here's all the trigger warnings because this goes dark at times, and I'm not going to show him abusing anyone, but if you're sensitive to that, similar to as if I was talking about R. Kelly or Bill Cosby, you might want to check in with me for another video. That said, this is different to me than R. Kelly and Bill Cosby. People knew about Bill Cosby's crimes, but they were still greatly a secret by comparison. Nobody had much bad to say about Bill Cosby, like publicly, although it was something that people were aware of, at least within the industry, and to an extent outside of it. R. Kelly is kind of in between because his crimes were known. At one point he was on trial for. After he got acquitted, a lot of folks, they gave him space. They still dealt with him a little bit, but he also did lose a bit of his star power. Like before R. Kelly went to jail, his most notable thing in years was that bizarre Tyler Perry inspired Trapped in the Closet series. But Diddy was very different. Diddy was a known ghoul in the industry for years. His abuse of Cassie was an open secret. His abuse of his previous girlfriend, Kim Porter, was an open secret. His sex parties and freak-offs were an open secret, to the point where many a celebrity had either tacitly or openly spoken on occasion about how they didn't mess with Diddy because they knew what Diddy was.
I'm gonna have a party, and we had parties, but I was more like just trying to just vibe, like just see where I look back on where I became.
Also, one quick thing on R. Kelly is like, the public knew that R. Kelly had married Aaliyah when she was 15 years old. And initially it was kept under wraps, but because there were rumors and because eventually it led to reporting on those rumors, it was revealed to the public. So like that was something that, again. Oh, hey. Hi. How you doing? Good. How are you doing? I was reading the room. Oh, here, I'll pause real quickly. Come say hi.
I literally checked your stream. I was like, let me make sure she's not doing something crazy before I go.
I was just about to get into
like, in the back, and then you were like, and then she was 15.
No, come here.
We got so many Labubu's.
Did you?
No.
No?
We got other things from Pop Mart though.
I stout the boobies.
Sorry, y'all for.
He got the one I wanted, but it's okay. I love for good things to happen to Will.
Yeah. No, we don't. We don't.
Well, because that's not fun. I don't think trading is fun.
No, it's not. You want to get it on your own. Everyone, Peach Jars, the fabulous, the so sexy Peach Jars.
Stop.
I love that you're like, I was reading the room literally because you popped in. No, I'm about to dive into a 2-hour video. Do you know F.D Signifier? He's great. He's a YouTuber, and he covers a lot of topics like super in depth.
Did you show those TikToks I sent you yesterday?
I did. Yeah. Oh, I talked about that guy.
He's only getting worse.
He's only getting.
I
yeah. So the
so
one asshole TikToker, what was it, Security Sam or whoever that I showed y'all, that was sent to me by Peach.
He posted another TikTok today where he was thanking for the opportunity. Like, guys, I made it. Like, I'm in the courtroom. Blah blah blah. I can't believe this is happening to me. Like,
no, I know.
Why are you making your success off of this poor fucking
woman? Why are you able to make success off of something like this? Exactly. And, he kept saying, too, as watching some of the videos where he'd be like, you guys know I'm only here because of you guys. Okay, dude. Yeah, you're only here in the courtroom making TikToks. What?
Genuinely concerning. Yeah. Not just that man.
No, I know. And the comments, too, are so alarming to me because they were like, God bless him. Without him, we wouldn't know the details. Like, he's the only source of information related to
I have many thoughts.
Diddy's case. Oh, me too.
I'll get into it. I'm like,
I know.
Right now.
I mean, I've been talking about it for like 2 days straight, where I'm just like, because people have been coming at me.
Oh, were they in court again today?
Oh yeah. I mean, Cassie, this is her second day of testifying. She's the star witness for the prosecution. So the trial is underway. It's going to be like 8 weeks.
I've heard it's going to be 8 weeks. Like, they already timed it out or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. And so she she's testifying this week, and then she gets cross-examined, I think, on Friday, which is going to be so nasty. It's going to be gross.
Yeah, that's what I was. Oh, I don't even want to know what that's going to be like.
I know. I mean, you know what it's going to be like.
But you're going to be in the desert.
I will.
And then you have to come back to reality.
I will be achieving plur, and then I will be coming back and taking it on. No, I didn't have time to get them yet. I know.
That's not very plur of you.
No, it's not plur of me. I'm gonna have to. I think Will's got some. I'll just take them. I'll just steal them and hand them out. Plur.
Stealing is not plur.
If it's from him, it is.
Oh, okay.
It's fine. Isn't that the best?
I like it.
I
was
know.
about to pull a Farley on this.
Start humping it
I kinda
twice.
Guys, Farley has a squishmallow. I'm sure Chad knows, and he circles it like a shark.
No, I don't know if
And
I've
then
told him
in front
that.
of everybody, he starts
I don't.
pulling down
That's
on
his private girlfriend.
You got a lot of girlfriends.
There he is. The sloth. Yeah. Do you guys know about the sloth? Maybe I have talked about it. I don't think so. I usually was
Am
like,
I outing your dog right now?
No, I mean, you told.
Guys, what's funny though?
Maybe
it
maybe
only
Will's told that before.
It only stays in the living room.
No, I know.
And it only happens whenever we're sitting on the couch.
And he only does it twice, and then he will rest on it. But he's not sleeping. He's just like resting.
Where's the?
And you know that was mine. Will got the sloth for me, and then Farley took it. Yeah. I told you guys. Oh my god! I outed my son. I guess.
I'm so sorry.
No, I did it apparently.
Guys, Farley does a lot of great things in this world. Like, he ate the cheese I left on the table today. Sorry. It was just two.
Gotta pay the
pieces of
cheese tax. You gotta pay the cheese tax. Yeah, you gotta watch out. He'll take your cheese. He'll take your cheese.
Okay, I'll leave you be. Goodbye, chat. Goodbye, Caroline.
Goodbye, my love.
Let's
go far.
Let's go 2 pump drum.
Go get Aunt 2 pumped. All right, y'all. All right. We're back. Like father, like son, they love their art dolls. Yes, they do. Bad train wreck. Thank you.
You miss me.
Okay, time to
for
lock
real,
in.
Because it seems like a thing.
I miss
with this
partying
birthday
with
party,
Puff, man.
But I'm talking about for
you.
your birthday.
Huh?
Why won't you party with me for your birthday, man?
We partied for my birthday before. You came to my party.
No, but me and you ain't never really party. You know what I'm saying?
What are some things that you feel like I should look out for? You know, coming into the game. Like, you've been in the game for a long time, man.
Somebody's house for.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Stay away from that. Stay away from the take that mansion. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, stay away from that. All right. Second, they're laughing because they know it's true.
Diddy also had been in violent altercations with numerous other figures within the industry, including assaulting Drake at a party.
Historically, we've heard about you putting hands on people throughout the years. Like, what made you put hands on Drake?
I did not put hands on Drake.
Oh.
And I do not want any problems with Drake. Drake is, right now, that's all I got.
Getting two-pieced by J. Cole at another party.
So bad you have to defend Drake. That's how bad.
At least one known shooting that caused him to break up with J-Lo and one of his rappers to go to jail.
According to police reports, the couple jumped into the backseat of his SUV. Puffy's driver and his bodyguard were in front. Officers arrived as the SUV pulled away. They ordered the driver to stop. Instead, he swerved around a patrol car and led cops on an 11-block chase. Police finally forced the SUV to pull over. Officers discovered a loaded gun on the front seat.
Everybody was booked, including Jennifer Lopez. They spent the night in the precinct.
He was also responsible for the poor fate of numerous other rappers under him. There is a long list of rappers and singers who curse his name openly over unpaid royalties, bad contracts, or just being cheated out of money. His penchant for abuse and cruelty was basically the main character of numerous reality TV shows throughout the mid-2000s and on MTV.
Point, your will go back. Somebody gonna quit. Somebody ain't got the heart, the stamina to be bad boy. Somebody ain't got the passion, the drive, the intensity to want it. Somebody's mental capacity breaks at a certain point. I need to see it now. I want to see it when I'm 2 million in.
But yet he persisted. Not just persisted, Diddy thrived. Diddy gained an unrivaled iconic status in hip hop, rubbed elbows not just with hip hop and industry giants, but business giants in general, and connected with the political elite. All of this while being well known that he was a snake, abuser, and a predator. And not in the hushed way of, different predators like maybe a Harvey Weinstein were. No, these were loud public accusations, trials, and multiple other legendary artists constantly sounding the alarm that Diddy was bad. Yet nobody.
I mean, Tupac and Biggie died.
Seemed to care till there was video proof. How and why is this possible? If it seems implausible that this would be the case, remember that we've seen this before. We saw this same routine again with Harvey Weinstein in the predominantly white world of Hollywood. We saw it with Cosby, and there are numerous other abusers and predators still moving around.
Sometimes I become white Chicago lady when I say Tupac. Snake predator abusers like necessary to get yourself into the circles he was running in.
Hollywood and our entertainment industry, even our politicians are doing this with minimal resistance. And this is because we have a culture that believes that those with power, especially men, are simply allowed to do certain things that those with less power cannot. And more,
especially too, then you add in when someone is a titan of music, of film, the artist label, where it's like their contributions to art will always supersede any terrible thing that they have done. It's why over and over and over again, when an actor, when a musician, when an athlete, when a famous producer has serious allegations against them, people are already willing to be like, no, it's fine, whatever, because they're too great of they've contributed so greatly to our culture that it provides them a shield. I mean, with Gerard Depardieu, who was just found guilty of sexual assault, you had a lot of people, a lot of really famous French actors and actresses defending him because of his contributions to French cinema. They straight up were like, they weren't even saying, he didn't do it, he's innocent. Their argument was French cinema would not have been the same without him. He is too great of an artist. We cannot lose his talent. That's the world we live in. Same with Roman Polanski. I mean, like literally any cultural titan who's got allegations, who's wrapped up in a court case, the argument of their artistry supersedes any allegations. I mean, the defenders of Woody Allen saying, he makes great movies and he needs to keep making great movies. And I don't know how to destroy that that very strong belief that someone who has created great work is too valuable to face consequences. The part that pisses me off so much, Diddy hasn't contributed anything to hip-hop. He's a talentless fucking act. Diddy wouldn't be shit if it wasn't for Biggie Smalls, the person he discovered. You know what, Flunky? You speak on it. Tell me you've heard this one before. We can't punish men because of his potential. Please don't consider the potential of the victims. I mean, that was the argument for Brock Turner. The judge said, Brock Turner, we can't ruin his future. He's a great swimmer. So, yes, he violated, he assaulted an unconscious woman, but swimming. But we have to make sure that we protect his future.
More than anything, that is what I'm going to talk about. Not just the horrors of Diddy behind the scenes, although it's going to come up a bit, but more to peel back the onion on how and why Diddy was able to exist in the first place, both as a legend and game changer in hip hop, a mogul and executives at the levers of power in the entertainment industry, as well as a monster
It's not about the art, it's about the money. No, it's about both. It just depends on who's making the argument, right? It's like the people who are making a lot of money off of somebody who's been accused of terrible crimes. Like, of course, they don't want their money being threatened, or someone who's doing terrible things and they have yet to be, they have yet to face consequences for it. But there's also the defense from, I mean, you'll see actors defend directors. You'll see that's why, like, those actors, a lot of whom I love and have at least since then regretted signing the letter, but there were a number of huge A-list actors who signed a letter to like support Roman Polanski not having to live as a fugitive, because he is just such a great director and he needs to be able to make American films. Yeah, I mean, some of my faves signed that, and at least, they've said, not all of them, but some of them, like Natalie Portman, not that she's one of my faves, but I think Kate Blanchett signed that as well. Yeah, I mean, in 2003, let's not forget the Oscars, where Roman Polanski won Best Director for The Pianist. He wasn't there because he's been a fucking fugitive since the 70s, when he fled the country after he had agreed to take he had pled guilty, trying to get a plea deal for drugging and raping a minor. He fled the country. He had been a fugitive for decades, and he got a standing ovation when The Pianist, when he won Best Director.
Behind and in front of the scenes the entire time. Diddy is a symptom of a bigger problem within hip-hop and all media, where the misogynistic and patriarchal norms of those spaces make it not just possible but predictable that someone like Diddy can survive and thrive. Because this one isn't just some hip-hop lore, I needed to reach out to some folks closer to the story than I was, because I wanted to dig deeper into the entirety of the era that Diddy was born out of. An era that coincides with some of my own very vivid memories of hip-hop, an era that was greatly shaped by Diddy for better and for worse, and most importantly, an era and culture that everyone was a part of.
This is a true economic business, right?
Too big
supply
to face
and demand.
consequences.
You take away the demand, there's no supply. Nobody's trying to buy a VCR right now.
Right.
So there's no one selling it. But we've heard oftentimes that prostitution is the oldest profession, which we know is not true. Farming is the oldest profession. And a lot of times when you take away those narratives that people have, you really begin to see how people are exploited and what makes people vulnerable, because trafficking is a really big business. But it's about power and control.
Who he's been, whether it was triggering to one group of people or another group of people, or people are talking about one incident or another incident. His brand has been so separate from however safe he felt that when all these allegations have come out, people aren't questioning whether it's in his ability to do this. Especially when that Cassie tape came out. When that Cassie tape was made visible, after him denying that even happened, literally an hour before everybody saw it or whatever, or whenever he was reacting to the lawsuit. As soon as that, literally everything is legitimately confirmed in a lot of people's mind. And that lets you know how long he's been living above the law or outside of his own humanity. And to have it implemented, to him to be such a powerful person with all these influences and having so much control over entertainment, and then truthfully the spirits business, truthfully fashion too. Truthfully, I mean, he's over here with presidents.
My story is that I was thinking about this as we were setting it up, because it's like, I don't really have nothing. Like, I didn't see anything. But what I want to talk about is how every fucking body knew. Every fucking body knew. So I got both of them. R. Kelly and Diddy. I go to a Diddy yacht party. I want to go to a Diddy party. So I finally get invited to one. I'm getting to the door. Another nigga I know, he like, no, she can't come in.
So Cassie filed a civil lawsuit under the New York Adult Survivors Act, where it gave a 1-year window between 2022 and 2023, and which is why we saw a lot of civil lawsuits being filed against accused abusers, because the statute of limitations for a lot of victims had passed. This gave them the opportunity to receive justice, compensation. And so that is why Cassie filed, and he settled within 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, damn, I can't stop meeting these haters. Now here we are all these years later, and I know why. And I'm like, but all of these men who knew, everybody fucking knew. And if they didn't have nobody to care about you, that's two situations right there. Could have had me completely fucked up.
I think the harm goes way back. I think if we think about how the music industry has historically worked for Black people, I think there has always been an understanding that if you are going to engage in the music industry, be prepared for harm.
Right.
You know, I think there has always been a fight, particularly for identifiably Black women, to get their penance properly from the music industry.
Right.
And because it's the same sort of principle. Let me exploit you because you're going to have opportunity that nobody else has. And so don't see it as me exploiting you. See it as opportunity that nobody else.
Do you know how many people would gladly be exploited to be in your place? Do you know how lucky you are to be in a position where you can be exploited so that you can further your career in an insanely competitive industry? Do you know how many people would be lining up to be exploited?
Else has. Because I'm wealthy. And look.
Is that champagne?
It's Prosecco.
Wow. Are you guys celebrating? Wow. Thanks. So sweet.
I did not want to drink. Will was like, what's one drink? Fuck. I'm out of here.
Thank you.
Look at my house and look at the people that I'm around, and you want access to this, and I will give you access to this.
I wonder how many artists we missed out on because they didn't take that BS. Exactly. And so when we talk about the, an accused's future, think about the impact that they've had on our culture, and we can't take away their ability to keep making music and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, think about the countless others, people whose names and faces we don't know, whose careers were stopped before they could, before they really could have a chance. I mean, Harvey, for all the people who stayed around in the industry, there were many others who it ruined their ability to have a career in the entertainment industry, that they were not able to, for many reasons, work in the industry.
If you allow me to financially harm you.
Much as Diddy deserves every takedown, think piece, expose that he has gotten, it's more important to recognize that everyone knew what he was doing. And if we don't engage with that, then we'll just make it okay for the next Diddy to do the same thing. We as a wider culture, not just Black folks, not just hip hop, because this is definitely not an only hip hop thing. I want to make that clear early on, but really the American way. We always seem shocked as insert bad man here does exactly the same thing that bad men have done throughout history. So let's actually analyze that history to figure out why it keeps happening. And to do that, we do have to understand how and why Diddy became such an iconic figure in the first place. And for that, we're just going to, before we get to the bad stuff, spend a little time analyzing and breaking down some hip hop history.
It all goes back to one point. I have a dream. A lot of times people see your dreams as they crazy. You going for your passion you have for your dreams may make you act crazy. You trying to reach your goals for your dreams, you're driven, The dreams you have are so visionary, they may call you a genius. But it's just, I'm a dreamer. I love closing my eyes and dreaming. I don't really deal with reality when I deal with trying to work towards the future.
Diddy was born in 1969 in Harlem, New York, to Janice and Melvin Combs. Sadly, Melvin Combs, Diddy's father, was murdered when Diddy was only 2 years old, leaving him fatherless and forcing him into the stereotypical impoverished environment that is a staple for the rag to riches stories that hip-hop tends to lionize. Although Diddy did eventually move to a much nicer Mount Vernon suburb later in his life, still, we're talking about the 80s when crime and urban decay in New York was at an all-time high. Our modern news media likes to sensationalize urban crime today when actually crime is down in America compared to the 70s and 80s. Thus, Diddy came of age in New York in the thick.
Wait, no, it can't be though, because all of these people have crossed the border. It's been an open season here. Like, if you want to come into America, come on in. And they send their criminals over. And if you live in the suburbs, you better watch out, okay? Because they're coming to commit crimes. The police have been defunded. Crime is rampant. The border has been open.
Of the crack epidemic.
More commonly known as crack. Because it's cheaper to buy.
We're sitting there talking, and next thing you know, out of the dock, gunshots just start going off.
War did continue in the streets, and Americans on the front lines had their own battle-hardened reaction to the new strategy.
It's not something I've ever heard Diddy speak on, but it's hard to imagine that even in Mount Vernon, he didn't have his fair share of struggle and horrors that were very close to him. All that said, it seemed like he was shielded from the worst of those things. Diddy attended a private Catholic school and managed to attend the prestigious historically black college Howard University in Washington, D.C., where he would make a name for himself as a local party promoter, and this eventually made a path for him to get involved with the exploding hip-hop music industry in the late 80s.
Started basically in college, Howard University, and I started doing internships. And one of my internships was at Uptown MCA Records, and I went from an intern to a permanent position there.
Diddy is entering into a hip-hop world in the late 80s and early 90s, right as it stops being the avant-garde radical music wave and when it becomes a big money industry with lots of corporate attention. And this positions Diddy to be a huge benefactor as he is connected to the raw art form through his entertainment and street connections, but also has the education and language to translate all of that organic hip-hop connection into corporate benefit. He is the perfect gatekeeper, right as that role of gatekeeping is being established, and this immediately imbues him with a lot of power in hip-hop.
I just took people that I thought I could get along with, and people that I'm fans of. I'm fans of all of those people. Like, it bugs me out that I'm headlining a tour, and I'm fans of all of these people that are helping to support me.
Let's take a close look of how Diddy, a man with legit really only one talent, found himself as a vector of significant power between so many talented people. And to do that, really need to just recognize that he just copied the framework that was already there, being done to black artists by white people for generations.
Rap shows, black shows have not sold out
Appreciate you.
in years since Triple Threat. And I'm telling you right now, it's easy. If we just do this couple of things, you're gonna sell records, and at the end of the day, you're gonna be going and playing to packed houses.
The music industry has, for most of its existence, been an industry deeply rooted in all the awful parts of capitalism. I talk about capitalism a lot, but for those of you who are new here, I want to explain a few things to make sense of how exploitative this industry and capitalism is.
Diddy, dirty money. Let's go.
One common misconception about capitalism is the belief that capitalism is simply the pursuit of money and wanting to have a lot of it and get more of it, or thinking that just having money or some power makes you a capitalist. And this isn't true. Having a good job and making a lot of money does not make you a capitalist, okay? If you do not own...
It's like when Hassan haters will liken him to the billionaires that he criticizes, and it's like, oh yeah? Oh, that's funny, because you're just like them. So you're going to criticize yourself, not seeing the very stark differences between somebody like him and somebody like Elon Musk.
Own or control.
Oh yeah, but you have a house and a nice car.
The means of production, you are a worker. Fewer industries are a more pure example of the failure of capitalism than the music industry. In the music industry, the product is art and music, and the laborer is the artist or musician. And people want good music and are willing to pay for it in some form or fashion. And the people that make the music, the artists, are the core contributors to what makes that industry work. However, to maximize their ability to make money off their music, which is only possible by getting it to the largest population that they can access, artists back in Diddy's era, in a world before streaming, they needed record companies to help. And this will require them to sign a contract with a company to be responsible to distribute their music, and the record company, the distributor, would take a cut of the profit. it. This wouldn't be so bad if not for the fact that over time, these record companies found ways to squeeze more and more money out of the artist while doing very little to reciprocate that value back to the artist. And that is the end result of capitalism pretty much in every situation.
Yes. Oh, and this was a thing that Chappell Roan called out when she was at the Grammys and won Best New Artist. And she was referring to record companies, these massive, massive corporations that have a long history of exploiting artists, the laborers, the people who are producing the work, and the companies that are getting the profit from that. And how when she called that out, it brought the corporate dick writers. It brought the corporate dick writers out to condemn what she was saying.
These ends with, how can I make more money by getting more out of someone else? One of the ways that the record companies did this high level of exploitation of the artist was through ownership of masters or publishing rights. So you might make a song, write a song, and that song belongs to you. But in order to sign that record deal and to literally put that song on a record back in the day, the record label would require you to sign over rights to publish and distribute that song, so they get the most significant cut of the song's actual purchase on the market. In some cases, it would be 50 to even 100% of all money made off the purchase of a song when it came to actually selling copies of the song the artist made to the people that want to hear the artist song. This sounds ridiculous and unfair, but record companies understood that they had all the leverage, and they would offer a one-time check to a hungry, starving artist in exchange to get full rights to their publishing and masters. And many artists, especially rappers, didn't even understand how that worked.
Especially with a like you, when I help get your ass out of a situation and you looking at me in my face telling me you ain't gonna do something. I can see if I told you to go rob a bank, you know what I'm saying? I'm doing some, I'm gonna get some cheesecake. You got that much ego? Go do your thing, man. Don't sit here and be talking about it, man. Be fly about it. Get your swag on, walk that way.
However, industry rule number 4080, if you know, you know. You ever wonder why so many of your favorite artists go broke and claim bankruptcy? Why so many rappers seem to not actually have what they say they have in their music? Why musicians are touring in their 50s and 60s just trying to stay afloat? This is because so much of their worth, so much of the value that they brought to the world was stolen by these record labels. It's the epitome of capitalism as a system. The real value bringers in the system, the ones that make the entire industry possible, get the least amount of return on their own talent and effort. And for many of them, their best situation is putting themselves in a position to one day be the exploiter themselves. That's why so many rappers start record labels back in the day. But we're getting into territory I'll touch on again later. Just understand exploitation is a core factor of this entire story, and it's why Puffy is who he is. When it comes to hip,
also it's why huge artists will disappear, and you'll go, where the hell's JoJo been? And it turns out it's that she was locked in a nearly decade-long fight against her label because she had signed an exploitative contract when she was 12 years old, and her career essentially disappeared, stalled out, because she was in musical limbo, because she was dealing with dealing with being trapped in a really terrible contract.
Pop. The only weakness that these record labels had at this time period when hip hop is exploding was that they had little to no clue of what to look for in this brand new, vibrant, radical art form. And they would just be grabbing up talent left and right, not knowing which one would be valuable to exploit or which one they'd actually want to invest funds in. For every Tribe Called
Quest, Haley was only 14 when she signed the first ever 360 deal. And what that is it is a contract where a record label gets a percentage of the earnings that the artist makes from various revenue streams. So it's not just the music. It's not just the sales from their music. It could be their merchandise. It could be their ad deals, etc. Yes. for the entire length of their contract. So essentially having full rights, which is crazy.
Plus, there's a Jungle Brothers, or worse yet, UMC or Crew. Not every rap group was going to be a huge hit. So this made men like Diddy super valuable to the labels, which is why he first got his position in the music industry. And he knew this.
Behind the scenes, they kind of intrigued me. So I started working for free. I took an internship and I would work for record companies for free, like a record company called Uptown MCA Records.
Right.
And that's how I got my start, from behind the scenes, just working for free. And then when a job came available, I was like one of the most likely candidates and I got a chance.
See, by the late 80s, as
What are my thoughts on the Twitch contracts? I actually think, from what I know of the Twitch contracts, those were actually beneficial to creators because Twitch signed these massive, massive contracts. And Twitch is the was the leading live streaming platform. So really it was more so like the YouTube contracts that streamers took, which also paid a lot of money, but because of the issues with YouTube live streaming, they ended up, like, as soon as their contract was over, went back to Twitch, as we saw. But Twitch paid out big money, and then they stopped doing those contracts, which actually kind of sucked for creators.
Sees the big money, we also begin to see large record labels like Gold rush in to scoop up hip-hop talent. Early on, this talent would emerge organically through word of mouth and numerous wannabe players and future music execs all the time trying to find the next big thing and profit off of them. For example, take Rakim, the GOAT of this early era.
I got enough to go around, and the thought takes place uptown. I grew up on the sidewalk while I learned street talk. Then taught to Hawk, New York, I go to Queens for Queen. Get the crew from Brooklyn. They money in Manhattan and never been taken.
He emerged as a phenomenon in the mid-'80s and connected with local DJ Eric B, and they formed a partnership after connecting to another former hip-hop legend, Marley Marl, and released their first few singles under the independent Zakaya Records, ran by Robert Hill, with likely very minimal income for anyone in this early part of the work. But all of this got the attention of another future legend and owner of his own set of abuse and assault allegations, Russell Simmons, who then signed them to Island Records, ran by Chris Blackwell, and then they released their first album to critical acclaim, but technically not on Island Records. Instead, it's 4th and Broadway Records, which is under Island Records. Then the album Paid in Full was so successful that Rakim and Eric B were able to land a deal with MCA Records
Russell
for $1 million.
too.
And this is the late 80s. Nothing like that was happening, and that deal would have been worth like $3 million today. That deal with MCA Records was under the leadership of Irving Azoff.
Remember, again, Kimora Lee Simmons was 17 years old when she met Russell Simmons, who is a monster. And man, there are just so many examples of young women who meet these titans in the industry and are in, they say, well, we didn't start dating till we were 18, which still is like gross, 18 years old, and he was he was not 18.
Where Rakim would stay for the next 6 or 7 years. Look at all these faces and names involved in capitalizing off hip-hop way back in the late 80s to the early 90s. And notice how the faces get wider when the money gets bigger, and less is going to the people closest to the art. This is what made guys like Diddy very valuable, because Diddy's only true talent was as a party promoter, which foretells some of his future crimes. His parties were able to bring in lots of people with money and power, lots of girls, lots of drugs, lots of talent, and lots of wannabe entertainers trying to get on.
Yeah, now you had a party out in the Hamptons, I guess.
Yeah.
And Bruce Willis heard it was going to be such a good party.
Yeah, he took a helicopter.
He took a helicopter to the party.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Are the parties that good?
Yeah, they crazy.
Crazy.
I ain't gonna lie.
So this left Diddy deeply connected with the club scene, the music scene, and the streets. And this allowed him to be the first to identify talent that could be pulled into the industry. Diddy was quickly scooped up by Uptown Records as an intern under one of his mentors and notable hip-hop gatekeeper, Andre Harrell. However, this didn't last long. To his credit, it seemed Diddy saw how the game was being played and felt felt like he deserved a bigger chunk of what was being offered. So in 1993, he left Harrell and started Bad Boy Records.
And you have your own record label now.
Yes, I have my own record label. All of my artists on my record label. I'm on my own record label. It's called Bad Boy Entertainment.
Diddy starting Bad Boy represents one of the earliest mega successes, if not the mega success in black entrepreneurship in the music industry, where these black men who were being basically paid off, getting one-time finder's fee, decided that they wanted to be bigger players in the hip-hop industry game. Brothers are realizing that they could make more money for longer by, and this would be a running theme, exploiting their connection to the artists by just partnering with these larger companies. Thus, we have Eazy-E with Ruthless Records in LA, Rap A Lot with Jay Prince in Houston, and of course, Def Jam started by Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons. Diddy wanted to be in that same category. However, Puff wanted to be different. He wanted to be bigger and better than that category had to offer. Puff understood hip-hop as a star-making vehicle. He saw the future in a way that nobody else did up until that point. To a great extent, at this time, even as it's starting to get bigger, it's still very small, and hip-hop felt regional and insular and very self-referential in comparison. It was still, at this point, very inwardly focused. Rappers and hip-hop fans were trying to one-up and impress each other, as was typical of hip-hop's competitive origins and really black culture as a whole. There was money there, but nobody was really thinking about how to expand hip-hop to its maximum capitalistic potential.
How to make it mainstream.
This is still an era where rap music isn't even being played on most radio stations and music TV channels, even the black ones. Nobody is thinking of hip-hop as a global phenomenon except Sean Puffy Combs.
I can't deal with what a reality is supposed to be. I have to take it to where I see it could go, where I feel it could go. I have to dream, no matter if I succeed or fail. I can never be afraid of dreaming. I think that's what's got me this far. This whole thing is a big dream to me.
Puff's goal was to have the biggest party possible. He didn't just want to be hot in New York, he wanted to be hot nation and worldwide. He didn't want his label and artists to compete with other rappers. He wanted his label and artists to compete with rock stars and pop stars. And most uniquely, Puff didn't want to just be the label executive behind the scenes. He wanted to be front and center as a key figure in the promotion of his company. Puff didn't just want the money, he wanted the money, power, and respect. This started out slowly.
So it was essentially how do we take hip hop and rap from this niche and turn it into this massive mainstream cultural force?
With his first big breakout at Craig Mack and the mega hit Flavor in Your Ear.
You won't be around next year. My rap's too severe. Get my flavor hit your ear. Here comes a brand new flavor hit your ear.
However, before that even fully played out, Puff had already started to focus his efforts on one Christopher Wallace, aka the Notorious B.I.G., aka Notorious Big, Biggie or Biggie Smalls, and put Big on the remix to that mega hit and released his first album, Ready to Die, before Craig Mack's first album, Project Funk the World, had even released.
I'm gonna drop for B.I.G. and Craig Mack.
September 12th is B.I.G. September 21st is Craig Mack.
As such, Funk the World received minimal push and publicity only because Puff knew what he had in Big and Ready to Die. That album was immediately labeled a classic, and Big was instantly crowned the new king of New York. Diddy had knocked it out of the park on his first at-bat and had done so in a way nobody had expected. See, Big was a rather unlikely superstar. While in private, most people that knew him described him as being magnanimous and charismatic with a bright personality, and his music presented this incredibly engaging and sometimes dark but always enthralling voice and figure that painted vivid pictures with his words. But in interviews and in public, Big was relatively subdued.
So I just stay more in the business side of everything instead of being a nigga that's gonna get drunk at the bar and fuck all the bitches and just stay at hotels all night and just trick a whole lot of money. I stay home with my wife and watch my money.
Further, Big was not the type of guy, not the type of star, even in rap, that people were expecting. Up until that point, guys like Rakim, LL Cool J, Big Daddy Kane, they came through with really good looks to go along with their superstar personalities and personas. Rock stars had the rock star aesthetic. And of course, we had R&B really up until that point for years prior, and they would often make girls swoon and throw underwear on the stage just at their presence. But to quote Big, "Heartthrob never, black and ugly as ever." But this left a really interesting role for Puff because he wanted to be valuable, he wanted to be present, and because Big didn't have that charismatic presence on screen, Puff became that for him.
I was so used to seeing Puffy face forward as a part of Bad Boy, just in general. Right. I mean, you had the 95 Source Awards, you know, where Suge Knight calls him out, and then he talks about unity.
Any artists out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star and don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record, dancing, come to Death Row.
He'd been omnipresent in all the Bad Boy videos.
Yeah.
He was in all the interviews, but it always felt like it was kind of both of them to me. It almost felt like they were a bit of a duo.
Yeah.
Except one of them was
being
just
Rakim, but like
right.
not really.
Right. One of them was responsible for ad-libs and hype, you know.
If you saw Big, you saw Puff. If you were interviewing Big, they were interviewing Puff. If it was a magazine cover or a music video with Big, it was a magazine cover or music video with Puff.
We banging, baby. We making music strictly for the streets. We appreciate your support, and it's all good.
You might want to look at this.
You know, it makes sense that it makes sense that Biggie was the first artist to sign with Bad Boy Records, because I think Diddy needed somebody who was like Biggie, where he was this incredible artist, but he wasn't this flashy showbiz type character. He was pretty subdued. He was quiet, you know. He was the type of person that Diddy could be center stage with, and in fact take the stage from him. And he of course he profited off his death, of course.
As exploitative, and you should. There was an underlying feeling that Puff was just there to leech off Biggie's ability and talent, and it was, but it was also iconic, and it worked. Puff didn't just help create a star just through his presence, though. He also guided the music, and in doing so, popularized an image that shifted the whole genre. I'm going to oversimplify this next part, but let's talk a little bit about hip-hop sampling and break beats, all right? Just follow me for the hardcore hip-hop nerd shit for a second, which, I mean, if you're watching this in this section, what else could you actually ask for?
1, 2, 1, 2, 3,
Feels so good.
In the early 90s, rap music was still dominated by gangster rap, as well as the more purist adjacent stuff like Tribe Called Quest, Public Enemy, etc. But all of it was still very sample and breakbeat heavy. And by sample or breakbeat, I'm talking about small sections of other songs that hip hop looped together.
My hands won't be.
Hip-hop is a child of jazz, funk, R&B, rock and roll, right? And if you know anything about those genres, you know that regardless of the core melody of a song, there were always these little flourishes that was a break beat or an intro or an outro. It was these cool things that happened in these songs, but only for a moment. And hip-hop came along and said, why not just make that the whole song? Why don't we take this 10-second, 20-second piece of a song that everyone knows and loves and loop that shit into its own melody? And that's what Kool Herc did back in '73. And that's really one of the true amazing but overly simple pieces of magic that hip hop gives us.
These niggas talking out of their neck, don't put no coffin out of yo. I'm way too paranoid for it. Let's get it, bro. DOT, the money power, that last one is better. It's a lot of goofies with a check, I mean.
But this also means that a lot of
Y'all, I'm seeing him next Wednesday. I'm so excited.
Early hip-hop was producers digging into the same crates that all of them owned and trying to find different pieces of melodies, and all of them can't be as classic as the intro to that Barry White joint, which itself has been sampled over 300 times.
And it was funny because it's funny because I asked Will if he wanted to go, Will, if you know Will's music taste, you know that he does not like West Coast rap. Will is He was born in New York. He was an East Coast guy. He is very adamant in his belief of the superiority of East Coast hip hop.
Naturally, it becomes harder and harder to make unique, dynamic beats. So Puff took a very lazy but extremely effective new angle. Again, Puff is a promoter, a party thrower, and he realized that the biggest successes, the most money that hip hop had to offer was getting the party started. He was the anti-JPEG mafia. He didn't want to wow the rap nerds at the time with his sampling and creativity and expertise with a bunch of musty dudes nodding their heads in the basement. He wanted the ladies to come, dress real nice, drink, and then get loose to these easy melodies. So to do that, Diddy figured, why are we just sampling one part of this great disco song? Why don't we just take the whole song?
Everybody was chasing Dr. Dre and how he was able to make sounds come out of his speakers.
Another abuser.
And so you look at Doggy Style was the biggest rap album probably ever at that point in time.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was, Doggy Style is sampled at the beginning of Ready to Die. And, you know, Biggie even makes reference to, depending on how you listen to it, take it, maybe it's an entendre, to Snoop falling off after with the Dogfather or whatever. But, you know, that was super sample based. The G-Funk era was still within the realms of artistic sampling, I think, for most people.
Yeah.
And Diddy was like, you know, we just go take all of Mo Money, Mo Problems for the hook, right? I looked at that as, when I look back at it, I look at that as more of a positive thing because I think it exposed more people to where a lot of the samples were coming from.
True.
Like, I think more people, especially kids, were getting exposed to a totally different generation of music in whole. Like, at the same time, though, don't get me wrong, I definitely was in a lot of critical conversations about Diddy. That style of sampling also felt lazy. It felt lazy. It felt like, you know, all the things that we love about producers all of a sudden became less relevant. And there's a lot of things that Diddy did over his career, or Diddy said over his career, to me had that impact on the rap industry or how people viewed success of rap albums.
If the song got people to dance and move in the 70s and 80s with someone singing over it, surely it could get people to dance and move in the 90s with someone rapping over it. He wasn't the first to do this, of course, but he was definitely the first to make it his entire style as a producer. And Ready to Die was a perfect example of this. Most of Ready to Die is your typical, at the time, New York mafioso gangster rap, but it did have a few tracks like Juicy, which took the entire melody and even its chorus in the 80s hit from Intune's Juicy Fruit. Then the second single.
A lot of people kind of thought he came up with these songs like Elon Musk. Well, that's because Elon Musk is a fucking idiot.
Big Papa followed the same success by sampling the Ozzy Brothers Between the Sheets. And the final single, One More
If Elon Musk thinks something, I think it's safe to assume that he is wrong.
Chance is actually a remix of the original album version. The album version of One More Chance is a traditional New York style hip hop track. The single version, however, uses a sample and the chorus from a DeBarge song of the same name. With these three singles being huge radio hits, Ready to Die was able to be a huge success that penetrated parts of the rap landscape that nobody knew existed at the time. And to give credit, this also brought attention to Biggie's unparalleled lyricism and wordplay in songs like Warning or Unbelievable, or the darkly introspective tracks like Suicidal Thoughts. It was genuinely the best of both worlds, and at the time it felt like a great evolution and revolution in hip hop. It meant that we could have the hardcore, high-end hip hop shit be popular and get to all the people. It would make the art form grow and make people get rich. There was nothing to complain about if you weren't paying good attention. Diddy would repeat this formula over and over for the next decade with Mace and the Lox, 112, even Jay-Z. It was impossible to turn on black radio in the mid to late 90s and not hear Bad Boy, and it influenced an entire era that would eventually be called the Shiny Suit era after Puff. He was changing the game, and unlike his forebearers, he was also making a lots of money off his music and his artists on his label. There's a world where this continues in perpetuity, but as you know, Notorious Big was murdered on March 9, 1997, only a few weeks before his second album, the eerily titled Life After Death, was set to drop. Biggie's death shook the world, as it was the second hip-hop legend in less than a year to be murdered following the death of Tupac the previous September. There's a lot of stories about Biggie's death and the currently unsolved.
Also, supposedly Biggie was going to leave Bad Boy. he was going to leave Bad Boy Records. But he never had a chance to because he was killed.
Of nature of it, some of which cast suspicious light on Diddy. Big allegedly wanted to leave Diddy. This isn't fully confirmed, but strongly rumored. And considering how Puff would treat all his artists from that point on, it is plausible.
It was this documentary that claimed, which we know wasn't true.
Yeah, check this out. We don't talk about things that are nonsense. We don't even entertain nonsense, my brother. So we're not even going to go there, with all due respect, but I appreciate you as a journalist asking. Thank you.
Because you listen, 7 years ago, I'd have been like, yo, did you hire somebody to kill Pac? But no, you do it like a journalist.
Yeah. No, I mean, we wouldn't even get into nonsense like that. You know what I'm saying? It's nonsense.
Which we never believed, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
So many imply that Puff may have had something to do with Biggie's death. I didn't do the research on this theory, and I don't want to make this the focus of the video. What I will do is discuss how Biggie's death is one of the best things to ever happen to Diddy, and arguably one of the worst things to ever happen to hip hop.
And you know, we still missing, ain't nothing. It don't get no better. A lot of people will say like time heals wounds. Big should be here. Tupac should.
I was so used to seeing Puffy face forward as a part of Bad Boy, just in general. When after he passes and Every Breath You Take comes out, it actually felt. Well, yeah, of course this is what happened. Yeah, of course Diddy got to make a song for Biggie. Yeah, of course. Now maybe the how big that song got surprised some people.
Feel like yesterday we used to rock the show. I lace the track, you lock the flow.
A few months after Biggie's death, Diddy released the song I'll Be Missing You, a sentimental tribute to his fallen friend. It was a huge hit, again using Diddy's formula of recycling classic, well-established melodies, this time being somewhat different, as instead of an old soul or R&B song, it pulled from the Police's classic ballad, Every Breath You Take.
Caroline's almost halfway through the video. To be fair, it's because this section in particular, I will say I don't have, when it comes to my pop culture understanding, knowledge, history, hip hop is one that I have a lot of holes in. So I'm legit learning right now from FD. Like I'm learning as a lot of you are learning. When I was growing up, I was a Christian. And so when I got really into my Christian era, well, my mom was Catholic too. So like I was not allowed to listen to rap. I was not allowed to listen to hip hop. And so then that kind of, so I like missed out on listening to that genre of music. And I thought it was bad. I thought it was like, I'm bad if I listen to any of this. Grills was like the extent of me listening to rap. And then I got really into musical theater. So throughout high school, I was like a musical theater girly. So this genre of music plus the history of it is one that I'm not an expert in. My parents sent me to a summer camp where rap music and Harry Potter were legit banned. Yeah, I went to a school where Harry Potter and rap were banned. Caroline always struck me as a gangster rap expert. No, not at all. No.
That has lost someone that they truly love.
So like honestly, as much as I'm conscious of wanting to add my own context whenever I'm watching someone's very well put together video, when it's something where I'm like, am I even going to be adding anything, or am I just pulling shit out of my ass? And would I rather the focus be on this information that is like, I'm learning from this as well. So, I mean, there you go.
It also won Diddy a Grammy and was the first rap song to make it to the top of the Billboard Top 100, spending 11 weeks there. It was a fitting tribute from a friend to his fallen peer and celebrated as such. I never liked this song. I don't know how hot of a take that is today. I definitely wasn't saying it back then, but I legit don't think I've ever listened to this song all the way through on purpose. Aside from it feeling icky, even to me as a young man back then, Diddy also is just a really, really bad rapper. It's amazing because he has this incredibly engaging persona in public and when people talk to him, but as soon as he gets on the mic, all of that goes away. He is a black void.
You know, I wonder, and I'm sure we know the answer to this, but I wonder if Diddy has always harbored No, we know this. Like, we know he was jealous of Biggie. We know he wanted to be friends with Tupac, and Tupac was not, like, he did not fuck with Diddy. He did not like his vibes. I mean, he's an example of someone who, like, he himself did not have the talent to be an artist in the way that the people whose careers that he launched, that he leached off of, that he, you know, rode the wave on had.
Charisma and magnetism. And it's apparent on this and every song from Diddy in this era. He got better over time, but just no. And then on top of that, it felt a bit
song for the eulogy for my brother who died back in the 2000s didn't age well. Yeah, you're looking back on it, you're like, oh, maybe we could pick a different song.
On some level, it was obvious Diddy would do a tribute to his friend, but the magnitude of it and the way it rewarded Diddy never sat well with me, because this song propelled Diddy into superstar rapper status, and he became really one of the first truly international rap superstars, as probably the worst rapper rapping at the time. Despite that, the whole of the culture got behind them, even if some of the purists and, you know, hardcore fans weren't really fans of Diddy because, again, he couldn't rap. They respected Big and Big's legacy enough to not say much of anything.
So I will say too, for Diddy, it's like he did not possess true artistry himself, but what he understood was like he understood how to become a cultural sensation. That was the thing that he knew to do, right? He threw these massive parties that would draw the biggest talent from music, from acting, etc. He knew how to do branding. Yes, he was a marketer. That was what he knew how to do.
One who's just like, fuck the collective, I just want the capitalism, which is a Puffy.
Right.
Keeping proximity to like
Also
a
a
CL
capitalist,
Smooth,
yes.
a Pete Rock, these men
No
who would
ID.
in some wavelength be peddling in this kind of hotep, just for
Right.
shorthand, theology, keeping them and having access to them, even a Rakim. I'm saying this because I used to work at Cornerstone Promotions, which has the 300 mixtape. So all these men would like walk through the office.
And suddenly
Yeah,
Diddy, a
he was
demonstrative
a hyper capitalist, so he knew how to approach this from a business perspective. You know, it's like there's a reason that a lot of the wealthiest people in music, in film, in art, etc., are not the artists themselves. Like, you really only reach that level of wealth when you become a hyper-capitalist, when you own the means of production. That's when you get into that billionaire status. Like, it's not being a talented artist that is going to get you to that level.
Actually
Like, only
bad
when you exploit. Yes.
rapper, not mid, not decent, outright bad, was being spoken of in the same breath as the top tiers like Nas and Jay-Z at the time. This wasn't a good thing.
They're finishing Life After Death, and they had songs for No Way Out that were kind of in process anyway, right? So you get Life After Death that comes out, I think in March, maybe. I know he died.
That. It came out like the week after he died, or maybe the week he did that he died, and then No Way Out is like June,
yeah. And so that's fast, because now you have two albums that are both number ones and both
Classic
have number one
hits.
songs, and both have number one songs on them. You have Mo Money Mo Problem going at the same time as Every Breath You Take,
right?
You know, and so all of that it felt tragic that Big died, of course, but it was very logical for me at that same time. I don't think I even thought about it being nefarious in the same way. Now, of course, there was all the speculation.
In hindsight, it feels very nefarious, especially
very.
A few months later, Diddy would release his first solo album, No Way Out, which also debuted at #1, sold millions of copies. And even though it wasn't a traditional solo album, as half of it is more like a bad boy artist showcase, think like how
I think Eminem has, like, for a long time, accused Diddy of putting a hit out on, Biggie and Tupac. Like, he's constantly dissing him. I think even he put out a song last year right? Did he put out a song last year where he was again saying that Diddy's connected to Tupac and Biggie's murders? He did, yeah.
Oh, We the Best. What's that dude name?
He said it on his MGK.
We the Best. Fuck is this dude's name?
This is called what?
That's just avocado
DJ
toast.
Khaled?
This is called what?
Turkey sausage.
This is called what?
Turkey bacon.
And this is called what?
Veggie scramble.
And what is this?
Those are pickled potato peppers.
DJ
And what is this?
Khaled.
And perhaps what is this?
Water.
Think of like how DJ Khaled does his albums, where he's not really doing anything specific except yelling in the background half the time. And Puffy did more than that. He did have several solo songs on this album, but pretty much all those songs are horrible. Regardless, it made huge waves in the rap world, with Every Breath You Take being the first single, and then this next single being All About the Benjamins. All About the Benjamins is one of those hip hop events where I cannot express to you the magnitude of the moment adequately. You just had to have been there. The song redefined the concept of street banger. The only songs I can think of that had a similar impact on the culture at once would maybe be like Rough Riders Anthem from DMX in 98. A Millie from Wayne back in 06, 07.
Okay, this song did have
Bad
a
and Bougie from the
chokehold when I
Migos a
was
couple
in junior
years
high.
ago.
I feel like there's like a running joke with you being left off Bad and Bougie.
I ain't left off Bad and Bougie. You think I'm left off Bad and Bougie?
Say again?
You say I'm left off Bad and Bougie?
What'd you say?
You say I'm left off Bad and Bougie?
Yeah.
Do it look like I'm left off Bad and Bougie?
What'd you say?
Do it look like I'm left off Bad and Bougie?
Nah, I mean, it don't look like it.
And not like us earlier this year.
Beat your ass and have the Bible with God watching. Sometimes you gotta pop out and show niggas. Certified boogie man, I'm the one that up the score with them.
Like, if you're one of those people that's like, they're
He a
playing
fan,
Not
he a
Like Us
fan,
too
he a
much,
fan.
please believe me, you would have hated All About the Benjamins.
What you wanna do? Wanna be ballers, shot ballers, brawlers.
And imagine like hearing that song all the time, and it's not streaming. It's on the radio, it's on all the videos, it is constantly being played. Because at this time, we don't control what music we hear. There is no Spotify or Apple Music. You turn on the radio and you hear what they want to play.
Yeah, listen, kids, that used to be the day those were the days of music roulette. You did not know what you were going to get. You put the radio on, and what you got was what you got, okay? There was no choosing the song, right? That's why we had to make mixtapes. We'd burn CDs. Eminem and his diss track, Kill Shot, but Kells, the day you put out a hit's the day Diddy admits that he put the hit out that got Pac killed. Yeah. No, he's been dissing Diddy for years. Tofu Shop, thank you for the 6 months.
And they wanted to play All About the Benjamins, and we were perfectly fine.
Drinking more liquor, dropping the pro digger. I'm with more sippers, watch my gold diggers.
And unironically or paradoxically, or I don't know, Diddy didn't do much to this song. He's at the beginning, and it's like, all right, thank you, Diddy. You can get out the way now. And after that is Jada Kiss and Chic Luch from The Lox without Styles P for goofy reasons I'll let you Google. And then Lil' Kim jumps on, and she basically bursts an entire genre of female rappers to this day with the first line she says. Like, this may not seem like much now. Like, out of context, this is like, okay, that's cute. In context, if you were there and you were a semi-interested female
Putting
rap
respect
fan,
on Lil'
that
Kim's
line
name.
made a lot of girls pick up the notebook. Like, they were there for that. And then, of course, it had Biggie with a verse at the end. So I didn't like Every Breath You Take, right? But this I got...
Show the kids. This is how we had to listen to 30 seconds of music back in the day. Oh, God. I wonder if you could even find one of those these days. Oh, my God. Hit clips. Listen, kids. Let me tell you about hit clips, okay? Let me tell you. You only got a little bit, okay? It was a clip. You don't even know. We didn't get the whole song. We just got a clip of it. Ayo, what is that? That's a hit clip.
Jiggy with. It even had a rock remix, which was still pretty good.
The audio is so crunchy.
But But that wasn't the end. Diddy's album No Way Out was full of these moments, a true classic of the era, again with relatively minimal work from Diddy by himself, which was good because he sucked. But still, it managed to somehow censor him as the star of the show, regardless of the fact that he wasn't who you were really coming to see. And it made him into a top tier rapper to the culture and the greater world of hip hop fandom, which is kind of bad. Like, the songs that are just Diddy are really, really bad. And furthermore, it's well understood at this time that Diddy didn't even write his own rhymes. He had Biggie, The Lox, Mace, and others writing for him, and he was still awful. So this is a problematic lesson to teach not just Diddy, but the rest of the rap game, that if you're thinking like I'm thinking, we see the ramifications of to this day.
And there's a lot of things that Diddy did over his career, or Diddy said over his career, to me had that impact on the rap industry or how people viewed success of rap albums. Right. You know, that whole, don't worry if I write rhymes, I write checks. We're still in the shadow of that terrible take to me. We're like, hopefully this shift that's happening kicks that out the way for a long time. But that made it so that 80% could eschew the 20% that really took a lot of these things seriously. They could sort of boycott actually people who took time and talent in a traditional sense, or maybe a more nuanced sense, or more dynamic sense. Say, get out the way. We're making money now.
The key to success in this industry isn't talent and hard work. It's exploitation, exploiting the death of a legend you're connected to, exploiting the talents of your would-be collaborators, exploiting the commercial appeal of hip-hop as a whole without putting your full effort into it. Lil Bill, my arch nemesis, made a video explaining how Drake wasn't the first of his kind in hip-hop, just the most dangerous evolution in a long history of rap prioritizing and refining its commercial appeal at the cost of its artistic purity and radical origins. It's a great video, go watch it, but I disagree with one piece of the formula he left out, which is, yeah, Drake should be compared to LL Cool J, Ja Rule, even Jay-Z, but to me, the true first Drake is Puff. In fact, I'd argue that Puff is more responsible for the deterioration of hip-hop and hip-hop culture than any singular figure throughout hip-hop history.
How you end up on the couch? Close your mouth. Why you looking at me like that, ugly ass nigga?
And please believe, much like Drake, Puff had pushback, but he was too good at making hits, too powerful, and eventually too iconic for people to really hold negative opinions of him for too long. Puff couldn't rap, but Puff was a vibe.
That's called power. That is called power. That's what he was amassing, building his empire. He was amassing power. He was, he was tapped into how to, how to make something mainstream, how to appeal to a wide audience. And he achieved that through his ambition, through exploitation of artists. And that is how he reached the status that he reached.
And really, he was the vibe. I'd argue that the emergence of Diddy includes an era where, at least in terms of popularity, hip hop is at its peak. This swag, if you will, which of course directly connects to Puffy's persona. And that swag is the iconic images of Puffy and his peers dancing in shiny suits with Hype Williams directed videos.
When I look at myself, God has blessed me with a gift to reach a lot of people, and I've been able to make a lot of things cool, from the dances that I do to the way my artists look, at the styling of the artists.
The idea of Diddy was synonymous with the high life, partying, fun, getting money, and hustling. Today, this doesn't seem like a big deal because this is what hip hop has looked like for 20 years now. But I remember the 80s and the early 90s. I remember early Tribe Called Quest and the Ghetto Boys and Boogie Down production, when rap felt more insular and underground and organic. And although I didn't know what I know today to see how concerned we should have been at Diddy popping up with these shiny suits, I didn't care then, and if I'm fair to myself, I shouldn't have, because it was too fucking fun, and it really did, regardless of its flaws, push hip-hop into a new stratosphere. Again, I want to remind you that rap music wasn't universally played on black radio probably until the mid-90s as Puff becomes this megastar. It was too dangerous or too edgy or whatever else, and like, that's how black art has always been treated. But today, Snoop Dogg, at one point the most controversial rapper in the game, is holding the torch at the Olympics in Paris or wherever they were this year.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg, once the most controversial rapper in the game, doing what were those ads he was doing with Martha Stewart? Snoop Dogg. Yeah, I mean, just doing ads for Bic lighters. Snoop Dogg doing ads for Bic lighters with Martha Stewart. Perfect for candles and more. Ice Cube is a cop on TV.
Hip hop early on was this musical boogeyman that was set to be limited to this specific role that, you know, was nice for us, but it also did limit what was possible. And now, because of Puff's effort, for better or for worse, it was this global phenomenon. As iconic as early artists like Run DMC, Rakim, and Curtis Blow were, they weren't selling out stadiums. They weren't doing huge world tours like their white counterparts, at least not regularly toward the beginning. They were getting crumbs by comparison. And even today, so many of those older rappers who helped shape the culture don't have money because they just didn't have control over what they were making. But when Diddy came and became hip hop's first true celebrity megastar and mogul, he ushered in that explosion in popularity that allowed him and other power brokers in hip hop to push into industries and commercial endeavors well beyond the original scope of the culture. But as awesome as this era was, it was still setting a dangerous precedent.
Also, one good example of this is the Super Bowl halftime show. So the Super Bowl halftime show has been around since the 60s. It was not the massive multi-million-dollar spectacle that it is now, with like companies spending a shit ton of money to have a 30-second ad spot. But this was also, like, the Super Bowl halftime show is also an example of how hip hop becoming mainstream, you know, no longer being relegated to the edges, being this niche thing, something that was seen as like controversial and dangerous. So I think the first Super Bowl halftime show was 1998. Like, I think it was in the 90s. That's actually a really good trivia question. Okay, let's see. I was just doing Super Bowl halftime show trivia when Sam and I were doing covering the Super Bowl on the podcast, but I can't remember. Let's see who it was. Okay, rappers at the halftime show. This is the first hip hop Super Bowl halftime show, but not the first time rappers. Okay, sorry. Let me make the distinction between hip hop and rap at the Super Bowl. So, Queen Latifah. Wait a sec. Yeah, this is a good trivia question. Queen Latifah was the first rapper to perform at the Super Bowl halftime show in 1998. And then Nelly performed, and this was like such a weird Super Bowl halftime show because it had NSYNC, Mary J. Blige, Britney Spears, Aerosmith, and Nelly performing Walk This Way. Like, that is such a seemingly random mashup of massive talent in totally different genres of music. But I think that is an indication of what FD is talking about here, in how someone like Diddy brought hip hop and rap into the mainstream, and how, you know, then this became now when we see the culture around rap and hip hop, it's like really, you know, the high life, etc. There's a lot of different music genres and artists that will blend in with rap and hip hop. Yes, Michael Jackson revolutionized the halftime show. Yes, his performance was like is considered the revolution in the Super Bowl halftime show into like this massive spectacle.
Understand that Diddy got this big because he learned the major key to thriving in a capitalist society. Exploitation equals money. Find people with something you want and something you can exploit value from, and ensure that they're in a weaker position than you so that you can have power over their talent, over their value, and then take that.
And then that's when Puffy came in. He was like,
Juicy Fruit, thanks for 4 months.
Take that.
Before we go too much further, I do want to be very clear about something. As I said earlier, the shiny suit era was amazing.
Yo, what you know about going out head west, rednecks, TVs,
Tofu Shop,
live it up, rock juice, pick a truck, peace all clean it up. Sickle kid, bad boy. You know you made me feel so good. You know you made me feel so good. Where you at?
It's great hip hop in any era, including today, but for my money, the 90s was hip hop's creative peak. I'm going to rattle off a list of classics from that decade, and it will probably be different from the last time I did this in a video. So let's just see East 1999 Eternal, Coming Out Hard, Moment of Truth, The Infamous, Aquemini, Philadelphia Half-Life, Lethal Injection, and so on. This is my most old head take. It will remain the same. All that said, while creatively and musically, the 90s are unparalleled, that era between 2000 and 2010, the era greatly shaped by Diddy, the shiny suit, bling, blog era, is by far the high point of hip hop's popularity.
What are some of your favorite memories of hip hop and hip hop culture from the 90s and the 2000s era before you had to like engage with the dark underbelly? You know what I mean?
Listen, I think two things can still be true.
Right.
Right. And one of the things that I grapple with the most that I shared with my 60-year-old boss at the time, this is in 2008, when I really began to explore this world, was, oh my God. Her name is Kathy McCullough. I'm like, Kathy, you have to listen to 8 Ball and MJG. Let me let you hear Space Age Pimpin' because we have been rapping
new things.
We've been rapping every word our entire lives.
If people would fly out to the Grammys, no ticket, no acts, really Netta and Charles in it, and just get into the gifting suites. And and as soon as Instagram popped off, and before Instagram it was MySpace and really more Twitter, and folks could get on Twitter and post themselves up in different places. And this is during the blog era too, man. Things are really coming back. Oh shit, bruh. A lot of this is in the era, this is the early social media era where particularly a lot of young Black men are able to launch music careers by going viral via a blog. But young Black men were able to get their rap careers launched off, and then the labels would just stick them in a van and ship them off to South by Southwest or to some festival in Puerto Rico, and they would do the festival circuit touring around. A lot of nasty work happens in that space.
The 2000s was an incredibly tumultuous time, though you wouldn't necessarily know about looking at pop culture. The presidency of George W. Bush was full of unilateral and clandestine warfare. 9/11 happened, and the concept of global terrorism was etched into the American psyche along with the inception of our modern surveillance state. The crack era.
Look, you had Disney Channel doing ads for the military. They were doing propaganda for the military.
Was dying, yes, but the meth era was on the rise. The AIDS epidemic was still happening. There was an economic collapse and a recession in the late 2000s. And that's just the things that we knew about that were carried on our news and airwaves. There were plenty.
You know what? That's a good reminder for for anyone who's like, man, I'm so nostalgic for the early 2000s. Things were great. We didn't have to deal with any of the shit we're dealing with now. It's like, well, actually, we were. What we're seeing now, of course, is the culmination of the last 20 years of this shit. But ask someone who is Muslim if how the early 2000s were for them. Anyone who's just brown in this country, be like, how were things post 9/11 for you?
Of things happening that weren't even allowed to make a blip on our social or cultural radar at the time because we didn't have social media to inform us. But in the middle of all of that, hip hop was experiencing its most popular and lucrative era.
I don't know if glamour is the right word. I'll let you kind of.
No, bro, I didn't pay rent back then.
But the fly lifestyle that you were a dancer at top 3 strip club in the country, right? Right. And so you saw these people come in and throw money, and it was like a video.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I remember
they made videos in there.
Right.
Times.
I'll never forget. It might have been the one time I actually saw you there and they did a surfboard move.
Yeah, the swag surf.
And that shit was amazing.
Censored on Nebula
right?
Cut.
So like I don't wanna act like I'm not gonna, and I don't want to act like, oh, strip clubs are awful and everybody needs to be ashamed and put their clothes on.
5 rappers and go.
I know, shit is dope.
I had a hell of a time.
Right.
Like I was just telling somebody the other day, trying to explain this whole lifestyle to them. I was like, when Jeezy said, I got nights, I can't remember nights.
You know what? Lil
I was
Pump.
like, no, I felt that in my soul. Like we would be going so hard. It was almost shameful. Not even on no predatory shit. You just get too drunk. You know what I'm saying? Like just because they would party all, like it wasn't just like the clubs would close and then those individuals can pay to keep the clubs open. Like there were several Mondays at Magic City that somebody would pay to keep the club open. They pick out like 10 girls and keep the club open like an extra 2 hours. I don't remember the exact deals. Like each one would get a different deal. But the management was pretty cool at trying to take care of us, especially too, of course. So like the dudes would have like a bar minimum and they'd have to buy so many ones and, you know, spend them during this hour or two. And so that would be that. So like the club was already closed at 3 and now you there till 5. And then you got to count all this goddamn money between 10 girls. Like it's 7 or 8 before you get home.
Jeez. That also sounds awesome.
It might be because of how troublesome the time was that someone like Diddy was so popular, because his infectious energy made us all forget what was really happening, even as he was in our face telling us to vote or die. I will never forget that campaign. That one was wild.
Puff Daddy?
Your friend Kyle told me you don't understand the importance of voting.
Oh my God, I forgot about this episode of South Park.
You haven't heard of my vote or die campaign.
Vote or die? What the hell does that even mean?
What you think it means, bitch.
Diddy helped create an image of hip hop that was still full of bravado and swag and edge, but without the genuine danger or fear inducing radicalism that hip hop had in the previous decade. The resistance to hip hop died down and the dollar signs livened up, and suddenly commercially viable crossover rap
made
was
it less
everywhere.
dangerous.
Rappers that would have been much more street or gritty like a DMX or Cameron suddenly became more flashy and party oriented. There were a series of commercial hits from well-established legends like LL Cool J, Jay-Z, Snoop Dogg, and the criminally underrated Busta Rhymes. Newcomers in the 2000s such as Ludacris and Nelly and Lil Jon released mega hit after mega hit. And then there were a million different one-hit wonders that gave us amazing moments like Chingy, Murphy Lee, Slim Thug, D4L. Hardcore fans and purists even still got fed with the Lox and the Roots and Slum Village, Mos Def, Common, Talib Kweli, and early Kanye West. And even the women of hip hop had strong representation, as this is Missy's most dominant era, and we get great moments from Eve and Trina, and an underrated classic from Rod Digger that nobody talks about enough. And all of this is happening while Kanye and Wayne are on like legendary runs that are paralleling each other, but somehow not crossing over, but creating like this yin and yang of all the amazing things that hip hop are able to do. Another cool thing happening is that
now we got Kanye doing Nazi songs. Thank you so much.
See the emergence of the mega hit like star producer. But again, Diddy made it so that being just the hit maker behind the scenes made you a star as well. This is when we first start getting the producer tag, like Just Blaze. Pump it up. Just Blaze. I really like doing that. I'm sorry. The Neptunes had their boom, boom, boom. Swizzy, Scott Storch, Timbaland, a bunch of others. Again, I can't think of. Not everybody was doing the tag thing, but it was so many producers that were stars in and of themselves. You just wanted to hear what they were gonna.
You know, it's interesting to like hear about how much things changed, because I think a lot of us, myself included, when we were hearing these songs, you know, in late 90s, early 2000s, had not. Didn't have experience with the genre before the influence of someone like Diddy. So not even knowing that this was such a massive change from how, from how rap and hip hop artists and songs had been treated in previous decades. You know, it's like we were listening to that shit at like awkward junior high mixers. You know, everybody knew those songs. Everybody was singing the lyrics. Didn't know what they meant, but
do with a particular rap star.
How many of y'all love hip hop?
Hip hop in the 2000s was a moment for a lifetime. It was ubiquitous. It was a party like no other. You couldn't turn on the TV or the radio and not see hip hop in its shiniest, loudest, funnest, coolest, most commodifiable form.
I met this girl when I was 10 years old. What I love most, she had so much soul. Might check it up.
Some saw the commercialization and money chase and the materialism as a detrimental thing long term. Some saw the road that this path would eventually lead us to.
It ain't nothing like hip-hop music. It ain't nothing like hip-hop music.
But even those folks, many of them purists, weren't paying attention to the big problem below the surface.
Universal.
Because yeah, it was a party circa 1998 to 2010.
All right, Common as a rapper or Common as an actor?
But the party was only happening to this level because of certain folks that didn't get enough credit. But if you've ever been to a party, you know that for it to be good, it has to have three things: music, alcohol, and the most significant part of this story that I haven't gotten to yet, women.
Stressing how hardcore and real she is. Really the realest before she got into showbiz. I did her, not just to say I did it, but I'm committed. But so many brothers hit it, she's not the same letting all these groupies do her. I see Mark slamming her and taking her to the sewer. I'ma take her back, hoping that the shit stop. Who I'm talking about, y'all? Hip-hop.
Around people's album release, because you got to do the whole city. You got to do the whole city.
Okay, you already started a poll. I was gonna put in Common as an actor, a rapper, or a Democratic Party king. I remember Common during the Obama years. Okay, being a part of the DP
circuit.
Yeah.
When you're getting ready to let an album out.
DPK.
And so like Jeezy used to bring them up in there a lot. Tip came through, and then whoever else, I can't remember everybody right now, but like, you know, all of our locals, whenever you needed to drop your single, everybody knew you got to take it to the strip club first.
So actually, so that brings up a big point. We'll transition somewhat. Is like, I don't think people fully appreciate how intertwined hip hop became with the strip club.
So it was both ends of the spectrums, because all of those strip club DJs worked with local artists. Like all of them had hoop aspirations too, right? As a dancer, you are a big fish in a small pond. Like you can't fit every bad bitch in Atlanta in Magic City. Like that's not the breadth of them. There were hundreds of thousands of just...
Okay, you know what? Common actually based king. Common to headline benefit show for Gaza at Ramova Theater. This was when was this? October 6th last year. A benefit concert for Gaza. Okay, king.
Non-stripper girls walking around Atlanta who were absolutely beautiful. But when you walk into Magic City, that's my domain, right? And if you are a top 5 in Magic City, or any strip club, any strip club, because you know White Chocolate didn't work with us. So at Magic City, she ran her own shit at Strokers, and that's why she stayed there, because she ran that shit, and I respect. Like that's how you do it. It was definitely a reversal of power sometimes, right? Like those men are in there and they're overwhelmed with all the selections, and you pick what you want.
And here's where things rightfully get uncomfortable. So let's start out with a little story. The year is 1999, and I'm 17 years old, sitting at home watching music videos on TV, because that's where we used to watch music videos. And suddenly it's this new video from probably my favorite rapper at the time, Busta Rhymes, off his most recent album, Extinction Level Event. And it's one of my favorite songs, Tear the Roof Off / Party Going On Over Here. As I said in a previous video on the B-sides, Busta doesn't get enough credit as a rapper, especially considering the incredibly dominant run he was on in the late 90s to the early 2000s, and his ability to be like super lyrical, street, but also make club bangers, seamlessly moving between them all. And Tear the Roof Off was a perfect example, because it started out with Tear the Roof Off, which is like this classic street banger, and then moved into a club banger at the end of it, or not the end, like the middle. You gotta go watch it or whatever. But here's the thing, if I'm being real, I don't even remember the Tear the Roof Off part of the song. All I remember is Party Going Over Here for one particular reason. Old girl in the white dress. Before I even show this, I know there are men my age having flashback to those teenage years who already know who and what I'm talking about. Even though there are multiple women in this video wearing white dresses, we know the one I'm talking about. Now, today in the progressive, sexually liberated, and let's be honest, overly pornified time of the 2020s, this bit of underboob is rather tame. But in the late 90s, this much side or underboob was literally too much for TV. So much, in fact, that it was actually censored on BET and MTV, which in some ways brought more attention because now my horny teenage brain just wanted to see exactly what was being covered up. In a time without OnlyFans and 1G internet, your imagination as a young man was your best friend, or some tapes that one of your uncles left lying around without hiding properly. So blurred out or implied nudity was as enticing as hardcore penetration. So I would find myself always watching to see what Miss White Dress was hiding, to see if there was some detail or angle that they missed that I could catch. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I would actually get to see the video in all its glory because of a show called BET Uncut.
Yep. Yes, this is the actual
BET Uncut was a show that aired late night on BET. Wikipedia says it aired at 3 a.m. I couldn't find any other sources for it, but my hazy memory tells me that it had to come on early. I feel like it was more like 11 p.m. because I wouldn't stand up at 3 a.m. to watch BET Uncut. I feel like, you know, the Gooner brain at the time may have made me feel like it was different, but I swear
that was certainly not playing on a television in my household, considering that we didn't even get to really watch television.
At 11:30, I was able to see some, video ads, but maybe I'm wrong. I want to talk about Uncut because while it doesn't have anything explicit to do with Diddy, it has everything to do with what hip hop was becoming as the party was going on in the 2000s. Uncut was something new for the hip hop world. Pretty girls are nothing new to any hot-blooded, male-oriented genre of music, whether it be the heroin chic models in the background of Robert Palmer's Simply Irresistible, or the 80s rock girls literally having cherry pies fall in their crotch from Warrant's cherry pie.
I asked Will if he ever watched BET Uncut, and he said, BET Uncut? Yes.
Video. And hip hop had its share of video girls way back in the 80s, but Tear the Roof Off and Uncut was an escalation and a change in the tone of things.
Yeah, he goes, BET Black Entertainment Television? I was like, no, different BET Uncut.
It's hard to perfectly explain the transition, but the best way I can put it is while video models in earlier eras of hip hop were sexy and attractive, the video models that came in 2000, better known as video vixens for a while, were also sexy and attractive, but different. The vibes were different, and we got to unpack why those vibes weren't that good. One of the best ways to show this difference is just in the aesthetic. While it's expected that fashion trends will change over time, we're also talking about changes in their bodies and phenotypical standards. Older hip hop and R&B videos do have their fair share of lighter skinned women, but darker skinned black women were much more prominent and typical as main features in the media. Also, the bodies of these women erred on the side of thin and dancer-like, probably because a lot of these women were professional models and dancers. This still presented some challenges to darker skinned black women as it pertained to beauty standards, but it wasn't yet what fellow video essayist Khadijah Mbo labeled as the rise of the slim thick video girl. In the Vixen era, we saw the rise and focus on black women with some serious curves. Bodies had always been loved and appreciated in black culture, but not centered in the media, not seen as the epitome.
Yes, it's not until you have non-black influencers, celebrities, etc., who are appropriating elements of black culture and black bodies that it becomes something that is mainstream. I'm talking about the Kardashians, for instance, of how the Kardashians in their love of dating, marrying black men, having black children, getting plastic surgery, and modeling their bodies in a way that popularized this body type that, when on black women, was never something that was normalized and popularized in the mainstream.
Epitome of black feminine desirability. Buffy the Body, Melissa Ford, Ketoy Johnson, and my personal all-time fave, Bria Miles. These women reset the standard for idealized body types for black women at a new pretty much unattainable level. And you can argue that their popularity with these types of bodies in the 2000s is why we have a rise in certain surgeries for Black women today. In fact, looking at the bodies that we see with vixens in the 2000s and the early 2010s, they seem small and tamed compared to some of the extreme body proportions that we've normalized today. On top of the bodies, there was also the phenotype. Colorism, which has always been a thing in Black culture, became much more prominent in this era. Those dark-skinned women that were prominent in the 80s and 90s were pushed to the side or outright left out for lighter skin, smaller, more exotic features, and or biracial or ambiguous Blackness, which became the standard, making for an even more extreme erasure of dark-skinned Black women that's happening in the media right now. There were so many awful things with this era, and there was pushback. There's notoriously the story of Tip Drill by Nelly, probably the Shawshank Redemption of uncut videos. This song, which was meant to be played in the strip club from jump, so let's like appropriately situated if we're gonna try to be fair, features Nelly and his group, the Saint Lunatics. Name 4 Saint Lunatics. Name 4. Were there 4? There might have only been 2. I don't know. I remember Murphy Lee. That's all I got for y'all. Anyway, Nelly and the Saint Lunatics invited a bunch of strippers to a mansion for a party, and they just had a ball. There's butts and thighs and boobs everywhere, and it's a good time if you take it at face value. These are ostensibly all consenting adults. Big money rappers are paying to see these dancers.
Will you teach us how to edit videos or give us advice on editing videos? Oh, I have no idea how to do that. I'm not the person to go to on that. There's a lot of people who can do that, but I am not the person.
For their time and talents, and nobody was hurt, depending on your feelings about the male gaze and objectification. There may have been a moment where a man slid a credit card between a woman's butt cheeks that, of course, you're only seeing if you're watching the Nebula version. But while the culture as a whole saw this as good, clean fun, others recognized the implicit harm not necessarily being done to anyone involved, but from the growing misogyny.
You know what's so funny is like there's so many things now that I learn where they came from, and I had no idea. Like the credit card, I remember that move where people would be like credit card, and they'd like swipe it. They'd like swipe it by your butt, like credit carding your butt. And that was just a thing. Like you didn't know, the origin of it.
In hip hop, because the Vixen era wasn't just about like explicit victims suffering in silence. It was also about a very strong, growing shift in perceptions and attitudes towards women and sex, especially Black women and Black sex. Make no mistake, the commodification of women is nothing new. Sex work is nothing new. Misogyny is nothing new. It should not be seen as this uniquely Black male thing, which is too often the case. But I have to recognize that the magnitude of sex on sale in hip hop at the time was different and low-key unprecedented, at least for hip hop culture. The overt connection between sex and access to it and success in hip hop was different. Little known underground rap artists could spend, I don't know, a tax refund check and hire some strippers and shoot a video and then suddenly have their video be on cable TV, on BET Uncut, exposed to hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of new eyes. Rappers and wannabe moguls used to need talent and personality and a bit of luck to get on, but now all they had to do was buy access to Black women's bodies. Before, these women were there for show and maybe for a good time, but now more than ever, they were there to validate the legitimacy of who brought them in. And most significantly, as the viewer, they were there.
Yeah, it's like this aspirational lifestyle, right? Look at me, look at my money, look at my wealth that I'm wearing. Look at these beautiful, sexy women surrounding me.
For you. Again, Khadijah explains this pretty well. Sometimes after that Tip Drill video blew up,
damn ads ruining the vibe. Wish I could sub. Maybe somebody in chat will throw pneumatic noodles.
Spelman College, the historically Black all-women's college in Atlanta, that's one of the top colleges, pretty much period, and inarguably the top college for Black women in the country. Someone invited Nelly to do a bone marrow drive. Nelly had become a cancer advocate in the name of his sister, who would eventually die of leukemia. The backlash to this video, however, caused an uproar, as many of the women at Spelman felt some type of way that a man that had been recently seen sliding a credit card between a Black woman's butt cheeks was going to just waltz into the most prestigious school for Black women ever and not at least have a conversation about what he was doing with his art. And this, of course, didn't really go well. There's a lot of misinformation about this event, which I know firsthand. This story ended up getting national news coverage, and they made it seem like Spelman students were just looking to hold large-scale protests. It was just a bunch of women not letting a man have a good time, but that wasn't really the case. What was requested was a private conversation. It's really sadly emblematic of how Black women often do have to confront some Black men with the most gentle, softest energy. But they really wanted to just call him in as opposed to call him out. But for Nelly, this was a bridge too far, and he canceled the event. Something he's still seen mad about in 2013 when he says he blames the women at Spelman for his sister's death. At the time, especially with the disingenuous framing of the story, I sided with Nelly. He was trying to do something good with his fame. He shouldn't have to face protests.
I asked everybody that didn't like it, I said, what did I do wrong? I said, it may not have been within your taste, but what did I really do wrong?
I also then, and still to an extent.
Yeah, and I think this topic of misogyny, sexism within the Black community, it's one that can get a little hairy, because I think so it's always one where, like, when talking about this issue, I like to defer to Black women, and obviously I'm watching F.D Signifier's videos speaking on it. I think you run into problems when, as a non-Black person, you are singling this out in a way where it's like, okay, well, we can talk about misogyny and sexism, but not in a way where it is something that is like only specific to Black culture, to Black men, to, what is, homophobia as well, right? The topic of homophobia, where people will be like, oh, Black people are so homophobic. It's like homophobia is in our entire society. Like, I think that's where we get into some problems, where it's not that these are not issues that should not be addressed, but I do think it's one where like someone like me is going to want to defer to the work and the experience of Black women and men who are speaking on these topics. But I will largely talk about, I will talk about like homophobia and misogyny endemic to our entire society. Not it veering into tribalism. I want to be careful, because I don't think it's something where like you can't talk about something unless you're a part of that community. I don't think that that's a good attitude to have, right? Where like we get hit, people who aren't Palestinian will get hit with that all the time, where it's like, why the fuck are you talking about Palestine? You're not even Palestinian. Or like, you can't talk about, Israel. You're not Jewish. Right? Like, that gets thrown in your face a lot. If you are not Jewish or Palestinian, why do you care so much? Why are you talking about this? Etc. I don't like the stay in your lane type attitude, but I guess I'm just trying to explain that I think specifically homophobia and misogyny, when it's discussed in the context of Black culture and with Black men, a lot of times I will see it being addressed in a way where it's like they're unique in being, they're unique in having these issues. Caroline, I hear you by giving you an honorary Black card. Use it wisely. Like, it's why Khadijah is a YouTuber that I love to watch their videos on, because they are a person who goes into depth, has a better understanding and experience than I will on this topic, and I think is more appropriate to defer to on this issue. And it's also too, though, why with Israel and Palestine, it's like, hey, let's be platforming Palestinian voices, talking about their struggles, and this is who we're learning from, I feel it. People point to the issue in a specific population to downplay the prevalence of the issue in overall society. Yes, like I will hear white family members be like, oh my God, black men are so misogynistic or they're so homophobic. I'm like, really? You, my Irish Catholic family member, are going to be saying that as in like, wow, what a problem over there. Huh, good thing that we don't deal with that. Like, okay, do we need to get into it? It's almost in a way where it's like, oof, yeah, that's bad over there. And it is rooted in, I mean, the reality is that like, white people saying that has its roots in racism itself, where it's like black people are animals, that they are inferior, that they are, all these problems within the black culture and community that has been, that this has been perpetuated throughout history by white America as a way to keep black people separate from the rest of the country. Anyway, those are my thoughts. To women within various oppressed cultures and societies, be it in terms of race, class, caste, or anything, will always make you learn the most. Listen to marginalized women and listen to them well. Yeah, like I remember I saw this trans creator who I saw a tweet or something where they were not coming after Hassan, but they were trying to make the point that it was frustrating for them that as a trans person and as a creator that they are often ignored as a source of information, and instead people will go to large cisgender creators. And look, people who are popular have bigger audiences. That's how it goes. My whole thing is always like, I do think it's important to be giving space and to be like helping marginalized creators who are speaking on their own oppression and who often are the best sources of information, to like be giving them attention as well, to be uplifting those voices. I do really believe in that. And it's why like it frustrates me as a woman when male voices are the ones that people defer to. And yes, I appreciate the allies. Love it. Okay. Men who are talking about how women are not inferior, like great. But because the bar's where it's at, and because a man who's a feminist gets treated as this, like almost they get a lot of credit for that, then a lot of times they will be the leading voices. They will be the ones who get platformed and uplifted speaking on these issues. Shonda Black has expressed feeling the same. Yeah, so it's not a matter of like, and people be like, oh, you're just jealous. Oh, well, maybe you should just be a bigger creator. It's like, okay, well, first of all, I think maybe we should recognize why there are often obstacles to people becoming bigger creators. Why is it that a trans person is going to have a harder time potentially growing a large platform over someone who's not trans? Or like black content creators, black artists, etc., facing maybe obstacles that white people have not. I mean, back in the 50s and the 60s, like often white liberals who were against racism were like going to other white people and like we're still uncomfortable with listening to black people and learning from them. So I get it that there is this, okay, when you are a person who's not in that group, not in that community, there is a, you have a privilege, you have opportunity to reach to people who do not identify with, do not identify with a marginalized group. And so you can reach through to them, which is why it's important that cisgender people are allies why men are allies, like, etc. You know, there is a power and a privilege that you have in not being a member of this marginalized group. But I just think that you need to expand who you're learning from, where you are, like, just making sure that we're not only uplifting and allowing people who are not in marginalized communities to be the ones speaking on behalf of those who are marginalized. You know? But seriously, it happens like that. So long as it's not done maliciously, we can find a middle ground where smaller voices are listened to and other voices amplify the message. Yes. And like, those voices will never be the ones at the forefront. They'll never grow in outreach if we don't listen to them, if we don't help uplift them. You know, it's like for a long time in the film industry, because only white people were allowed to make movies. You had only white people, even when they were well-intended and even when they were not, you know, heinous racists, who were making films that were touching on, touching on issues of racism, who were touching on all forms of bigotry. And like, they were telling the stories. They were telling the stories because they were the ones who were allowed in, because they were not gatekept. Super duper kitty, thank you for the 7 months. I don't hold the privilege people are using to help me against them. Like, Hassan isn't the cause of these men not listening to me. I know he's trying to do. Totally. And that's what this trans content creator that I saw was. She was saying that as well, but people were attacking her, and I thought in a cruel and unfair way. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man, you're doing the thing. You're doing the thing. So y'all, you know what? As the viewers, as the consumers, as the people who have the ability to uplift a diversity of voices, that is something that is also on us, you know? So it's why it's like, you know, I would rather somebody watch a video by Khadijah or F.D Signifier, who not only do I think do a lot better work than a lot of these other content creators, but are the two voices that I think you can really learn a lot from, and should be voices who are listened to and uplifted on issues like these. Marginalized people should have the space and the mic, but we also acknowledge that we need to share with people who get listened to more than us to get the convo started. Yeah, that's the concept of having allies. It's that people who are in a more privileged position use that in order to bring attention to these issues and to educate and inform and get the masses, get the masses to be better, to be more educated. Yeah, solidarity, exactly. There's a lot of Black people on Blue Sky constantly talking about the same issue, as it's so prevalent. Yeah, I see people talk about this all the time. I've talked about it. I've expressed my frustrations, like when these male journalists will call me and they only want to talk about men. They only want to talk about the manosphere. I'm like, hey, actually, I would like to offer my perspective and my experience and talk about this thing as well. And they are not interested in it. I am like, I'm no longer taking your phone calls. I am no longer wasting my time. Okay. Because my time is precious. My time is precious. And if this is not something that you're interested in reporting on or getting my perspective on this matter, and that's how it goes, then that's how it goes. Cleve Ferial, thank you for the 3 months.
Now feel like there's a way that these types of conflicts do strip the agency from the women involved and becomes kind of just fun policing.
They're grown. It's not like she was a child. It's not like I manipulated her into thinking. You see what I'm saying? And if you really had a problem with what I was doing, why wouldn't you go to them and ask her? You know what I'm saying? Why not interview the girl and say, how could you let somebody do that to you? And then if she feels bad, then you can come to me and say, yo, you made her feel bad. But see, everyone didn't ask. Nobody asked her. Everyone came directly to me with that shit.
There is sometimes a lazy analysis of these things as if all of these women and all of these men are.
Also, yes. As far as like, sometimes I will let white people fight each other over racism so I can take a break sometimes. That's another thing I've addressed too, where oftentimes the emotional labor is put on those who have to, this is their lived experience and it's exhausting. And it's why being an informed, educated, progressive person who can help to perform that labor, you talk to your friends and family, right? Men, talk to other men, get other men to be better. So this does not fall on the backs of women who are, have to deal with this on a daily basis. Cis people, get cis people to be better. Okay. This is exhaustive, emotional, physical labor. And it's yes, as you said, sometimes I like to take a break and sit back and let white people fight each other over racism because it's exhausting.
Are operating in a completely imbalanced power dynamic where the women can only be exploited, not actually having agency or enjoying what they do. In fact, this is a strongly believed rumor that from my time in school was absolute fact, but I couldn't find any corroboration right now. So I have to say this with a grain of salt. But there were Spelman girls in the tip drill video. But that's really mostly FD from the mid 2000s in the middle of this era, not FD that's gotten older, done more research, done more reading, and has a better understanding of how these things work. This is not the FD that actually worked in anti-sex trafficking and unfortunately knows that even good, clean fun has unintended consequences for other people you're not thinking about while you're having that fun. Diddy is not unique. He was preceded again by Epstein and Weinstein and a bunch of other people to whom we've never heard their names. One of the biggest abusers and sexual weirdos of all time might be president by the time this video comes out. But there is something to say, something that other scholars of Black masculinity try to, not agree with will say.
Lovefool has a good question. Can anyone recommend a trans man, left-leaning political commentator? I feel like I can name trans women, but I don't have a trans man perspective within the content that I consume. That's a good question. YouTubers, I'm not really, I don't even know that many content creators, and certainly in the realm of leftist trans male content creators, I'm failing to I'm failing to produce. I'm sure chat collectively has no. Fuck off, Houseophobia. Fuck off. Fuck out of here. Okay, a lot of people have recommended Ty Turner. Ty Turner. Here is his. The other thing too is it's not even necessarily needing somebody who is doing political commentary. I think just in general, find content creators of all kinds and help them grow in what they do, unless they're a piece of shit, then obviously don't. But it's not every trans creator needs to do politics, and a lot of them don't want to, understandably. You know, I think a lot of people don't want to do politics explicitly. So yeah, I don't even think it's a matter of like needing only trans creators who talk about. I think it's one of those that it's kind of impossible to not, if as a trans creator, to not have trans issues be some part of your content, because your life, your existence is just political. But anyway, it's like, yeah, just creators that are great too, but people maybe don't know about because it's harder to get visibility, etc.
That recognizes that there are certain black men seeking to play out that masculine role power fantasy in the ways that we've watched white men do for generations, going all the way back to the James Bonds
Jamie
and
Dodger's
hairband
great.
era that we just saw in the 90s. Black men have often witnessed white men do pretty much whatever they desired with women while being blocked from any consequences. And black men are blocked from the economic and social capital to make such power possible. And while I think a lot of black men would argue they are not imitating white masculinity when performing misogyny and patriarchy with our own women, I think it'd be incredibly facetious, especially at a time when half the rappers were imitating mafia crime bosses in their music, to say that that wasn't an effect. What we see in hip hop with Puff and with all these other figures who may or may not be pulled down with Puff is the imitation of the patriarchal ideal, which comes with the idea that as a man with money and power and respect, I can do whatever I want with women as long as I have those three things over them. And even as I want to defend hip hop and always point out that culture influences art and not the other way around, I can't lie and say that being inundated with that imagery and that energy changed the way I perceive the world.
That's interesting. Culture influences art, but not the other way around. I wonder if he has a video where he elaborates on that, because that seemed, he stated that as like something that he feels very firmly in, the idea that culture influences art, but that art doesn't influence culture, where I don't think I agree with that. I mean, one thing I say all the time is that it's a mirror, where art does have the ability to influence culture. I mean, we see how I talk about film a lot, right? And how film, in it's for good and bad, right? Stereotypes that have been repeated throughout film history that have had an influence on culture. I mean, also art and culture being interchangeable. Yeah, working hand in hand. So I'm curious if he has another video where he like goes into his thinking on that.
Around me, even
art imitates life, life imitating art. Yeah, maybe he meant something different from that. I think he's saying that artists put their culture into the art, but art doesn't create its own culture. It's an expression. Well, I would say though that there is an influence both ways. Anyway, whatever.
I, as a guy that was never much of a ladies' man, still engage with women in a very specific and often bordering on toxic way. I remember being in college and harboring certain negative attitudes. I remember hearing things about girls and witnessing things that I thought maybe were wrong, but thought, man, I shouldn't say anything. That's not my place. And I'm not going to blame it completely on the culture that was surrounding me at the time. But I will say that that conversation that Spelman was trying to have to confront Nelly to help educate and shine light on the problems of this culture being unchallenged in the way we consume and perceive it, I definitely could have benefited from that then, and definitely benefited from that over time as I got older. I want to be clear, I am not alone, and I'm on the mild side of things, because so many people, male and female, attached to this culture, attached to this industry, attached to the music, have way more skeletons in their closet than many of them would like to admit. Mind you, this is an industry being ran by the same people that started Freaknik at the time. I always have to bring up the fact that, one, I was too young to actually go to Freaknik. I just want to make sure that's clear. But if you're under the age of 30...
I mean, dude, what I think there's a point there that I was making, like when I was talking about Sinners, where the influence of Black culture on pretty much every aspect of culture within America, but how because of racism, Black people being erased from their from having the original footprint, and Elvis being a good example, where it wasn't until Elvis started doing that style of music. Here's this white man who very much so is a reflection of what white America is comfortable with in their consumption, and how he skyrocketed to massive fame on the art of many Black artists who came before him. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's like Black art having an influence, but often because it has been appropriated, because it has been stolen and repackaged.
Please understand.
Black culture is our biggest export, yet we get cut out of the recognition. Yeah, like that is historically very true.
And these are your parents I'm talking about. This is who was in charge of the culture at the time.
Atlanta is the strip club mecca. And when I was in college 25 years ago, if you were a stripper, you went to the next state and you hid it. You didn't want anybody to know, and you were doing it because you needed money to pay for college. That was what my understanding was. Right. It is a celebration now to be a dancer, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that was because it was accepted and glorified by the hip hop community. Had it not been accepted or glorified by the hip hop community, it would remain in its own space as a place where wealthy people go and spend money and have a level of entertainment. The thing about the adult entertainment industry is that young people and vulnerable people automatically get caught up in it.
There's no real separation of those economies. Like you
would like to separate it, but you really can't, to be honest, because you get caught up in it.
I always thought the Me Too movement would never be able to dismantle the urban music industry.
Explain.
Because when the Me Too movement was popping off, it was very white woman centric, and it was very woman good, man bad. And
I think the Me Too movement is another example, because Tarana Burke, a name that you should know if you do not, Tarana Burke, who is a Black activist, she coined Me Too. She started this movement in 2006 as a way to help Black women, particularly young and vulnerable Black women, to have to have their voices and their experiences be heard. Of course, it never became mainstream until white actresses who had been victims of Harvey Weinstein in 2017 tweeted out #MeToo. She's an amazing woman. I got to interview her. She's so, I deeply admire her. But yeah, like just bringing up Me Too, a perfect example is that it began by this woman, Tarana Burke, but it was a decade later that it became a global movement and, of course, a viral hashtag when Alyssa Milano tweeted out #MeToo and was encouraging women to like tweet about their experiences with abuse and harassment. But it also was like, and it also kind of, white liberal feminism, reducing it to men bad, victim, women as it's supposed to be to a movement for all victims of abuse. Of course, we know many victims of abuse are women and girls. No, Alyssa Milano was the one who tweeted, but Rose McGowan was also one of the major voices in the Harvey Weinstein case.
My favorite quote from Bell Hooks is "Patriarchy has no gender." Mm-hmm. And particularly in the urban music industry, from my experience, the women might not be the doers, but they were the enablers, they were the handlers, they were the facilitators. When you think of assistants going to do things and booking things and getting products and making sure people were flying out, all women facilitate keeping Cassie in a room. it is a woman doing some of the more violent work that keeps people entrapped into these cycles.
We've all been hearing the whispering about who about to get questioned next. And that's gonna break my entire fucking heart. But oh well, let it burn. And that's what happens. I hope they knew that when they left and stood there and did nothing, that these are some consequences of that. And and they not just did nothing, but like participated supposedly.
The biggest blow to the Vixen era narrative of it being
right, and it's why liberal feminism will celebrate feminism as like more women CEOs. You know, more women in power, even if when they are using that power to oppress the working class, of which women comprise women are in the working class. But this idea of feminism as long as women have a seat at that table, which is an exclusive, hyper-capitalist table, that's the whole girl boss thing. Right, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, lean in. Thank you, Sheryl Sandberg. FD's video on Black capitalism speaks to this. Right, the idea of Black excellence being now Black people who have a seat at that table, Black billionaires, celebrating Black billionaires as some sign of progress for all Black people, when no, that's a Black billionaire is still a billionaire. A female billionaire is still a billionaire. This is not progress.
Good, clean fun comes in the defining text of that era. The book Confessions of a Video Vixen by Karen Steffens, who also goes by Elizabeth Ovenson.
It's almost like there's a radar that goes out when you're a new girl in LA. Like the guys just know you're fresh meat.
This book set the world on fire in a way that seems inconceivable today. Maybe it's because she was the first to do it, but I couldn't imagine a woman, especially a Black woman, getting this much attention in mainstream media coverage for their expose on the realities of what's going on in the world of sex and hip hop behind the scenes. This was a very scandalous tell-it-all that allowed the story of a Black woman being incredibly promiscuous be its core narrative device. And of course, there was a lot of pushback at the time, but it was still very much like accepted, rewarded, and focused on in the wide pop culture in a way that Black women usually just don't get to do. Steffens regaled her
family dinner. I got yelled at when I say more Black billionaires won't fix shit. I think it's also a cultural divide too. In my experience, the people who I see still with the reverence for Barack Obama, still thinking that just having a Black president was a momentous sign of progress, tend to be Black people in older generations versus younger Black people who are just disillusioned and also recognize that Barack Obama was not good for Black people. Barack Obama was not good for working class people. And I think there's this perception of like representation, a seat at the table is something that we were told we must achieve so then we can have equality that way.
Her tryst with notable rappers and Black celebrities at the time, including alleged couplings with Vin Diesel, Ja Rule, Dr. Dre, Lil Wayne, Jay-Z, and of course Diddy. But what's wild is that's kind of the core thing people think about in this book, not the immense abuse and trauma and turmoil that she went through before becoming a victim to this industry or after being a victim in this industry. Steffens speaks to the ugly truth around what was happening to many of those women that were there for the good, clean fun.
Well, the relationship had been going downhill because it was an abusive relationship, and it had been almost from the start.
Okay.
So we were together for about 4 years. I had gotten pregnant earlier in the relationship and had an abortion.
You had an abortion originally?
Yes.
Okay. That was something you wanted to do or he wanted to do?
That's something that he wanted.
Okay.
So, and it was hard. I was 17, he was 27.
Oh.
It was difficult for me. I was 17. It was my first time being pregnant, and but that's something that he forcefully made sure happened.
She herself escaped to that lifestyle because she had come from such a harsh and abusive environment because of her father, her mother, sexual assaults that she suffered as a young lady, poverty, and even epilepsy. And she says outright in her book that this entry into the world of hip hop was first and foremost an escape. It was not really just about fun. It was her recognizing that her body could be a ticket out.
All my life, I had been doing things to get money. You know what I mean? Even when I was dancing, I was giving that service to get that money.
Vlad's a fucking fan. I don't understand why people still talk to this
Just the
dude.
dancing, just the being on stage, taking your clothes off to get that $1,000.
But because of what she had went through before
you,
even
Hogan.
entering in the industry, it allowed her to further go through that while she was in the industry.
The video world has become a cult kind of environment where you have a particular group of video girls, you know, and there are different types of video girls. You can be the dancing girl, the model girl, the actress girl, and it's very easy to be exploited in that particular field. You have 3 minutes to prove yourself. In those 3 to 4 minutes, you have to be the most exciting, the most beautiful, the most voluptuous. It's difficult to do that and still come across as intelligent. A lot of times you can't have both, and so you end up in some way partially exploiting yourself.
And the thing that you have to recognize here is that while there are plenty of women that are there for good, clean fun and there to get paid and there to just have a good time that they can look back on, there's not like a check to make sure that every woman entering into that world was coming in with their head on straight and with no issues behind them that would make them likely to be a target for men like Diddy. Or men like Irv Gotti, who was technically married, technically probably dating Ashanti at the time, and had gotten access to Corinne Steffens from Ja Rule.
Instantly, I just started meeting people.
And you met?
The first person I bumped into out was Ja Rule at a club. And it was 5 days of nonstop sex.
And then on top of all this, it was Irv Gotti that introduced her to Diddy as a gift. This book came out in the late 2000s at the height of Diddy's popularity.
Ja Rule, who was also, never forget, wrapped up in Firefest. He co-founded Firefest with Billy McFarland, but of course denied that he was involved in any of the fraud stuff. He's like, no, look. What I was involved with was the good stuff. The other stuff, not the good stuff.
So it makes sense that she's relatively nice to Diddy and describes him as a fun and charismatic guy, though she does imply the existence of freak-offs at different sections in the book and talks about Diddy once took her and another rapper she was dating, Exhibit, to a gay club. But what I want to focus on is this idea that she met Diddy as a gift from Irv Gotti. Gotti saw her as a possession and was into the idea of sharing her, giving her to other men like Diddy. And while in the book she implies to be a fun time, when things started happening with Diddy, she talked about how she understands now that she was being shared as a commodity. And I would go further to say that this wasn't ever about her. It was about the men involved. People that know a lot about abusive men know that abuse is never about the woman, it's about power. In fact, a lot of these powerful, deviant, predatory men low-key don't even like women. They don't really do what they do in service of women. More than anything, their energy and attention is focused on other men. They want in a way to be desired by other men. And I don't mean this in an explicitly sexual way, even though obviously this was true as it pertained to Diddy. I mean in a psychosexual, homoerotic way that doesn't really have to include actual physical sex between these two men. Now I'm getting into my barbershop philosophy bag for a second, but bear with me.
It's using women as a tool to attain that.
You ever wonder why so many rappers end up dating the same exact women and then be mad and fighting and dissing each other over it?
Yeah.
Like the very concerning story of Ruby Rose, who's been linked to Playboy Cardi, Drewski, Cam Newton, Soulja Boy again. But concerningly, some of the rappers she's dated, allegedly such as 21 Savage and Travis Scott, met her as a minor.
Because there are rumors about you and various famous men. I'm going to name a few.
Okay, I'll tell you which
You
ones
could
to choose.
react.
Okay.
Travis Scott.
When I was younger. Oh wait, actually I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do this game.
These are isolated examples, but if you're up on that particular part of hip hop culture and pop culture, you'll know that there are dozens of women that have just been, for lack of a better way of putting it, travel.
Like another example from my club days is how men who would come into the club, okay, so they want to show off their money, and you know who they're showing off to? They're showing off to other men. It's not showing off to women. It was showing off to the other buyers in the room. So they would like want to have a bigger show. Sometimes they would have us bring out a sign that would be kind of like a diss, like a little slight against another male buyer. And they would want to have women at their table, literally dick measuring contest. Yes. I would have to, as a hostess, I'd have to be at these tables with these big buyers because you want them to engage in a buy off, right? Like in a spend off. And so women would be at these tables. Like, these guys wouldn't even necessarily be talking to them. They wouldn't be interested in the women. They were just there as like a prop. Like, having more beautiful women at your table as a prop so that you look like the biggest fish in the room. And you look like the biggest fish in the room to the other men who you're competing against. And like, a lot of times too, these guys would send bottles to other guys' tables and be like, hey, what's up? Like, because they didn't look at the women as like on their level. It was men against other men. And it's like, hey, you know, you're the person that I'm trying to impress, that I'm trying to, that I'm like in this, I don't know, it's like a weird flirting thing too. Yeah. But in like I don't know how to, yes, that would be it.
Traveling around their industry, dating different rappers. And it's not that those women don't deserve to be desired or loved by any particular man.
Yes.
But
peacocking for other men
is indicative of the fact that some of the key elements of these women's desirability is the fact that other men have had them that are also seen as powerful and significant within the industry.
The dudes that come into the club for the actual girls are not the ones throwing up ones. The ones that came in to actually see us, they're quiet about it. They gonna slide you to hundreds.
Yes,
they don't want the niggas around them paying attention
That's what I'm talking
to what
about.
they got going on, because they came to pay attention to you. But I'm not saying like everybody that does this in the strip. This is fun. I throw ones in the strip club. It's fun, but it is definitely for fucking attention.
Yes.
And who are you getting attention from? Like, obviously the dancers were there, but the hundreds of other men in the fucking building.
Yes.
Everybody is looking at where all the money is coming.
And this is not unique to the hip hop industry. This is something that happens with black athletes, celebrities.
Dude, and like so I've told stories about Zach Horowitz, who was the Bernie Madoff of Hollywood, where he had he's responsible for the second largest Ponzi scheme. He scammed a lot of people pretending that he was a big time film distributor, etc. Someone like him would come in and he'd look around to see who are the other men, like the high powered men in this room. Okay, so here's a guy who owns the Texas football team. I don't not the Cowboys. Like, what? Okay, does not matter the specifics. Here is a really rich man who owns a football team, and so he would eye him and would be like, okay, I want to impress this guy, send him bottles, etc. But this is a guy who would come into the club and his eyes would just be on the other men because his intention was to impress them, to peacock for these guys.
These powerful men across the board throughout history have participated in this unique phenomenon. Think of Marilyn Monroe, who dated not just brothers, but like multiple powerful men the same way that Ruby Rose did. A look into Diddy's accusations shows a pretty clear inclination that some of his abuse towards women is completely steeped in this homoerotic competition. Diddy wanted others to join him in abusing and degrading women, even at times degrading men as a bonding practice. In the accusations levied towards him regarding Cassie, it said that he paid other male prostitutes to have sex with her while he filmed, and that he would send these films to other men in the industry. The thing I think a lot of people don't understand about this type of violence towards women is that sexual assault is never really about sex. It's almost always about power and control, which is often how some men excuse their behavior when they're not being.
And that's why it fucking makes me so mad when men and also women I will see say, oh, really? Well, she's not pretty enough to be sexually assaulted. It's so vile. Okay, it's so vile, but it misses the point of what is at the root of sexual assault, and it is power. That's what it is. It does not. There is no There is no, oh, if you're pretty, then you are at risk of being assaulted. And if you're ugly, well, that's ugly privilege. I have literally seen men and women especially. It's like, oh, it's so painful to see women express this belief that uglier, less societally, deemed by society what is attractive or what is not attractive, that those women are lucky because they're not preyed on. And it's like, actually, those women have to deal with, when they are the victims of sexual assault, being less likely to be believed because of this fucking attitude. Because it's like, really? Or when you'll see guys, and I'm so sorry this is graphic, but when you'll see men online who will say, like, you're too ugly to rape, or like, you know what, you're ugly, but I'd go for you anyway, type of thing. Ugh. Not a lot makes me want to fight, but this does. I got assaulted once on a school trip. A classmate got upset with me because she felt she was prettier. It was wild. We were kids, so I wish her well. Yeah, that is a very damaged mindset. The tier list. Wait, what's the tier list? Too ugly to sexual assault is a crazy thought, and it is one that is perpetuated. This belief that if you are not conventionally attractive, then why would you be sexually assaulted? Because sexual assault is about attraction, and why would someone want to, like, clearly no one would be attracted to you, so therefore you would not face the potential of being assaulted. I mean, Trump has said that. Yeah, Trump is so, I mean, this fucking horrible piece of shit. But someone like him has many times perpetuated this idea that sexual assault is about attraction rather than it being about power. Ugly women are not only objectified sexually, but they are objectified via degradation. Yeah, what hasn't Trump said? I've also seen the opposite of that, where if it's a handsome guy, people will be like, he's too handsome, he doesn't need to rape anyone. Right, where people will be like, I don't understand. This is a man who's attractive. This is a man who has money. Why does, like, he wouldn't need to rape anybody. He could, women would fall at his feet, because it's not about that. It's about power. It's about coercion. I mean, that is something we see all the time. Yes. Name an athlete. Name an athlete that has very serious allegations of sexual assault, and you see that excuse used all the time. What? They're hot. They're famous. You know, like, best soccer player in the world. You think women aren't throwing themselves at a person like that? I just love puzzles. Oh my God, we have a celebrity in chat, y'all. We have Miss I Just Love Puzzles in chat. What's up? Welcome in. Will's my partner Will Naff speaks very highly of I Just Love Puzzles. And anyone Will speaks highly of is automatically at the top of my book. How about tacos? Thank you for the gifted sub to I Just Love Puzzles. Everybody say hi. Anyway, okay. We are 25 minutes
violent or sexually deviant. They just see it as a part of good, clean fun. When you look at how men like Weinstein or Russell Simmons downplay their accusers, it's often in saying, well, she was there and open to it, or what do you think she was there for? She just wanted to be famous and wanted to be with the powerful men. Russell even said that he can't be a rapist because he's not beating women over the head, which is like, I'm happy that nigga's in an island somewhere away from other people.
Rape is a strong allegation in some of these stories, or that you pinned women down. I mean, like, bad stuff, you know, either happened or it didn't, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's a serious word, but I think they've changed the meaning.
How so?
Because I've never been violent to anybody. The rape is a violent crime. So it is a very serious. Somebody jumped out of bushes and raped somebody, it's different, I think. So it's a different kind of recollection. I mean, so I don't think anybody's saying it was violent. Of course, I've been insensitive. But certainly, never been forceful.
The access to these women and the ability to control them was a standard
What
set
about jumping out of a bush?
BET Uncut transmuted their bodies into genuine currency for greater access and trained a generation of young people to see that as normal. And even now, as much as I enjoy my fair share of ratchet, female-oriented gangster rap, I'm a Glorilla fan, I'm a Meg Thee Stallion fan, etc. Even as they are taking back a level of agency on their sexuality and bodies as a part of the hip-hop art form, it's still participating in reinforcing the same culture. We see women sexualizing themselves and inviting the male gaze on their terms. And yes, some of the same men that promoted this behavior 20 years ago are acting like they don't like it now because they're centered in the dynamic, which is weird in and of itself, but it doesn't mean that the consequences, those unintended consequences of those displays, are any less hazardous for women, or I should say younger girls who aren't famous rappers who are participating in the culture, to not be exposed to harm, to not end up getting exploited by those with more power than them. Because that's what this issue is about, power and exploitation. Who has the power and who doesn't? Who does the exploitation and who's getting exploited? And this brings us back to Diddy. Diddy's behavior is monstrous, but it's important to understand that he is a monster of our creation, of the creation of that culture that we all enjoyed for a good 15 years before he started to finally die down. And at that point, he was already off and running with the most heinous of behavior. And what's, I don't want to say funny, but interesting in all of this is that Diddy wasn't like a specific mastermind of the video vixen concept. In fact, I don't have a strong recollection of Diddy doing any really exploitative stuff with women on screen in his videos, etc. He talked a good game in his music, of course, but his imagery was almost meant to be seen as too classy and upscale for the type of booty shaking that you'd see on BET Uncut. It goes to show how appearances can be deceiving. Because Puffy wanted to present as acceptable and viable among this white audience, he didn't do the pouring champagne on strippers move too much in public. He was a high-end upscale party guy. He wasn't the freak off guy, at least publicly.
Exploiters typically tend to show what they want to certain people. So most people who might be on a list, most people in the industry can say they went to a Diddy party. But I'm pretty sure a large amount of those people said, I never saw any of that. And yes, I was at the party. Certain people, just like when they people who went to, yes, I flew to Epstein's Island. They may not have ever seen what goes on behind certain closed doors. So what happens is exploiters tend to create that narrative so that one person can staunchly say, that is not what happened. And they say it because it is true for them.
Yeah, maybe this is not the right comparison to make, but it feels similar to when women will say, well, I was around him and he wasn't, like, he didn't rape me, so... And the insinuation is like, well, is this person then a rapist if he didn't rape me? And it's not that, like, people who went to Diddy's parties were saying that didn't happen at the party I went to. I didn't know that happened at other things that he did. It's not like they were saying that in defense of him. But there are other people who take that and will go, that's evidence of this didn't happen because it didn't happen every time, because it didn't happen to every person who crossed his path. It's like a cult where there are layers to how involved, aware certain people are. There's enough surface level people. There's enough surface level people to say they didn't see anything themselves. And I think it's why we won't know the people who were closest to Diddy, like, for instance, why am I blanking on his name? Ashton Kutcher. Okay. Ashton Kutcher, who was like best friends with Diddy. We don't know what his involvement was. We might find out. I don't know. We don't know what he knew, but he was in that inner circle. And that's where it's hard to believe that those who were in his inner circle were not aware when there was the general understanding that Diddy had a violent temper, that he had dangerous sexual proclivities, that he mistreated women, that he was involved in criminal activities. So it's not that any person who went to one of the famous Diddy white parties was involved with his criminal activities, or even that they necessarily were aware. But for those who were in the inner circle, it's hard to imagine how they did not at least have that awareness, even if they were not involved. We do know Ashton Kutcher supports rapists with the letters that he's writing to judges. We also do know that. We do know that specifically for Ashton Kutcher, this is a person who has previously defended someone who was convicted of multiple counts of rape, and that is Danny Masterson. So I think I say that because if you're doing the whole, oh no, my fave was at a Diddy party in 2007. Oh, I can't like them anymore. Everyone who was anyone either went to a party or was trying to go to a party. The Diddy parties, the white parties, that was like the ticket to the biggest event. The who's who. Which is why, I mean, obviously we know why people who are trying to use that stupid Hassan tweet as evidence that he is a rapist, or that he's like cool with rape, etc. It's so bad faith. But that's just an example of like he when he was a young guy, okay, as someone like Hassan, who's looking at this world of media and entertainment and is like, oh man, how awesome would it be, whatever, to go to can't wait to go to a Diddy party, etc. No, he didn't go because no, Hassan was not like a famous enough person to have gotten to go to that. He even made it to the White Chicks movie. Yes, that's in White Chicks. Yes. Like, he specifically said that he didn't go, but his girlfriend at the time wanted to. Yeah, anyway, that thing is stupid. That thing is stupid, but it's one of the things that I feel like I cannot escape being on the internet, seeing that being used as like a proof, evidence of all these things that I want to be true. I mean, Hassan was a club promoter when he was at the University of Miami, a school I almost went to. Cannot believe I almost went to University of Miami, but I almost went to University of Miami because I got a full ride. My mom and I went down there and she was like, you're not going here. I think there was also a hurricane the day we were there. I can't even picture that. I know it's hard to picture that, but there is no picturing that because I didn't go. My mom did not like the party school aspect. We went to South Beach too for like a second, and she was like, no, absolutely not. But anyway, yeah, he was a club promoter in school. Anyway, the point I'm making is that Diddy and the Diddy parties had a chokehold on people's perception of what was cool, of what was aspirational. That's the one school I begged my daughter not to apply to. I had to go visit because I got a full ride. And I turned it down.
It does not erase what this other person's truth was. Right. And that's how they exploiters create division. That's how they create this gray area of how do we believe which person? And this person has to be a liar because this person said it was true.
But that's the whole thing. His public facing image and his behind the scenes image were very, very different, which is, I guess, somewhat scary because not only was Diddy like being misogynistic and abusive towards women behind the scenes, he was doing that to anybody he had power over. Despite everything I talked about in the last chapter, there's still this sense of shock about Puffy's behavior being exposed. But why? how can we even think to use the word expose here? Because that word makes you think that this is a surprising reveal, that this stuff was being hidden, but it wasn't. It hasn't. So much of the things that anybody's going to talk about with Puff are public knowledge, not just public knowledge like you had to do some Googles and research, like literal touchstone moments in hip hop history. We know about the public fights. I alluded to the conspiracy theories around Biggie's death and Tupac's death, but what's often glossed over to me that's more indicative of who this man is what happened to Puff's biggest act after Biggie, from that same era when Puff presented Mace as his next biggest thing. After Big died, Diddy shifted all of his efforts and attention to Mace, who didn't have quite the gangster veneer of Biggie, though it's eventually revealed that the decision to make Mace more of a ladies' man was a Puffy creation. Because Mace has such a cool, kind of like smooth veneer, Puff realized that it would be much easier to fit him into his framework as, you know, the pretty boy Mason Betha versus Murder Mace, who he was before Puff signed.
Started rapping about 3 years ago, and I basically went to Atlanta to meet somebody else, but I ran into Puff and he gave me a shot, and I just try to make the best of my opportunity. So Mace was like a mix between Drake and DaBaby, maybe. That's the best. That may not make any sense. That's definitely gonna date me, because like, when has DaBaby been relevant in the last several years? But that's, I apologize, old head moment, but you get my point. And all this came together in Mace's first album, Harlem World, where we saw that Mace, though not the typical boom bap.
Someone said Mace is, he's a preacher now. No, he was. So I just looked this up. He retired in 1999 to pursue a career as an ordained minister. He led a church in Atlanta, but then he came back in 2004 with a welcome back album, and then retired 6 years later after a 1-year release from Bad Boy Records. So I guess he's focused. I guess he has a podcast and he's focused again on his ministry.
Extra hardcore lyricist, was still pretty solid on the mic. He had an amazing flow. Puff's production worked perfectly with it. We also get some of the first beats from the Neptunes. That song, Looking at Me, one of the biggest bangers of the era that's low-key kind of slept on. But not really low-key, because the album sold 200,000 in its first week, which was big even back then. And over several years, it was certified platinum. So Mace, much like Biggie, was often running with a lot of success.
Yes, Mace, his CD, it went #1, debuted at #1?
Yes, I mean, that's like astonishing. The only other person to do that is like myself and Snoop Dogg.
But 2 years later, as Mace released his second album that no one remembers, already things are taking on some weird and drastic changes. Mace announced that he was leaving the music industry to become a preacher.
But Mace was huge. Harlem World was huge.
Multi-platinum.
Huge album with huge songs that still hold up to this day.
The first Neptune's hip-hop track, I believe.
Yes.
And I never forget when I first heard, what was that? Why are you over there looking at me?
Right. Mace was so big.
Yeah.
That album was so big. And within one album, he said, I got to get out. I need Jesus and to get as far away from that man as possible. And that really stood out to me.
And again, here's a perfect example of Diddy amassed his power, his wealth. The reason that he reached billionaire status or close to billionaire status was via exploitation. This was a young artist who he was had taken the creative control over this artist's music. There was a lot of pressure that was put on him. He was being screwed out of the royalties. So this is all exploitative behavior that lined Diddy's pockets and caused this artist to retire from the industry at a young age.
That is when, and the people I was around too, truthfully, that's when we started talking about, well, how evil is Diddy really?
Mace gave a lot of reasons for leaving before and after, and in the preceding years would return to the rap game and leave multiple times. However, in recent years, especially after starting his successful podcast with longtime friend and fellow rapper Cameron, Mace has been very explicit about his issues with Puff and very clear about him being a snake and making more than a few allusions to the crimes and abuses towards women and men that have followed Diddy for years.
Since Cain killed Abel, I'm able to kill Cain.
And love don't steal, my nigga, change your name. Come on. And I see no integrity in your name. And I'm haunted by the ghost of St. James. Champagne King, match my rolling plain James. And I say, blame God I ain't changed. And if niggas never found a killer, why is niggas living it? Everybody broke, niggas gotta blame the vision.
That's in the Bible.
Niggas be selling their soul to go to a brunch. Niggas might end up sweet, drinking that punch. I suffer good. And niggas know I'm from another hood. Forget a brotherhood, I'm trying to make sure that my mother good.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Killer, I'm doing good, man. Reparations is getting closer and closer.
At the time, this seemed like just a dramatic blow up, but it wouldn't be the only one. It would become a first in a series of artists signed to Puff that left him under the worst circumstances. For really most of Diddy's career, it seemed like every artist to make a splash that was closely connected to him eventually fell out with the label on the worst terms. Big died. Craig Mack, Puffy's first major breakthrough artist, fell into a cult and eventually died himself. Mace retired. The Lox escaped and never messed with Diddy afterward. Black Rob left and died sick and in poverty. Loon left over money and also retired and converted to Islam. G-Dep was dropped after flopping, had an addiction to PCP, and then in an effort to get right with God, confessed to a 15-year-old murder which put him in jail for over a decade. 112, Diddy's most successful R&B group, left after their run, but not without lawsuits over royalties, and almost everyone from Diddy's run of reality TV show artists has sued him, with several suing him right now for abuse. And those are just the things that I remember vividly that like we knew. There's probably way more behind the scenes that we don't know.
Things are starting to sound more believable.
Yeah, half of them died.
And then you start looking at all the other people around him who just end up going to jail. Like, you know, Loon went to jail, Shine went to jail, G-Dep went to jail. Like everybody around him was like dead or in jail.
The Lox left real early.
Yep. And they were loudly talking.
They have the skit Raping You Records.
Right.
And I listened to that today for the first time in forever. I'm like, yo.
Right.
And he says, if you can't be my artist, I can't rape you. I gotta rape you. And he's talking about like it's not getting into the diddler stuff, but it's bumping up against it.
It's bumping up heavy.
It's bumping up heavy.
That the people involved in these scenarios, it probably takes them decades to realize that they were victims. That this is so well positioned by a multitude of people as an opportunity, as a way to get into an industry, as a, you know, just like you're special because you get access to
There's a running joke in the Black community that signing with Diddy was signing with the devil.
His wealth and power. And the interesting thing is people get fixated on Diddy's sexual engagement with men because of homophobia.
Yes,
but men are also socialized to just take more beatings and just pass it on to the next person, regardless of their sexuality. Particularly men in the entertainment industry will allow people to abuse them outright because it gives them proximity to wealth, and then they will just abuse the next person.
Yeah, they take it out on the next person. I think about Shine quietly taking that case for Diddy. This type of exploitative power was so normal that it was expected, because please believe Diddy is not alone. Not just in the possibility of sex crimes, but in the exploitative nature.
The hazing cycle, this, as a man, you are expected to take this abuse and then you turn around and you dole it out. You enact it on others. I remember Will was telling me about, like, I've asked him so many questions about fraternity hazing and what it was like at his school. And it was, of course, he went to a Southern school. He was in a frat in a school in North Carolina. It was awful hazing. But he said that when he finally became a member of the fraternity, he refused to then turn around and haze, but that a lot of the guys who were in his pledge class who were traumatized, like the shit that was done to them was so awful that, I mean, there were it's the types of stories that your jaw just drops. And how these guys then it wasn't even just they had no problem turning around and hazing the incoming class. They relished it. It was like, this was done to me. I had to take it. I had to put up with it. So now it's my time. It's my time to get to do this. Like, that was the mentality. It's going to feel good doing it to someone else. Like, you endure it, and then you get to be the one doing it to someone else. Wait, are fraternities really predatory? Do you mean like specifically around hazing? Yes, the history of hazing, particularly in Southern fraternities, is one that is filled with some of the just you can't believe that those things were going on. Like, throwing, this one is pretty common and is unfortunately a common hazing tactic, but you throw like a couple pledges into a closet, you give them a handle of alcohol, and you say you can't come out until you finish that, and they're like throwing up, you know, alcohol poisoned, etc. And that's on the I would say that's on like the more tame end of it. Like, people have died. Yes. People have died, have been seriously hurt. Yeah, that's that being on the milder side. Like, there was one story Will told me about how there was this guy, like, this is just fucking gross. There was one fraternity brother who would take a shit, like a massive shit in the toilet. And he would force the guys to stick their hands in and handle his shit. I don't know. Why? But gross shit like that, dangerous shit. Yeah, and then worse stories. Yes, there was a sorority at my college that would have the sorority sisters. I've heard this one before from other people who had to experience this. Sorority sisters having to strip down naked, sit on a washing machine, and then they circle the parts of their bodies that are jiggling. Like, just really evil, awful shit. Yeah, hazing made illegal in Arizona 10 years after ASU student death. So at a lot of campuses across the country, they've tried for, over the years to crack down on hazing, usually after someone has died. I'm so glad I finished eating. Yeah. I told you it was gross. Definitely not the style of Will's frat, but in the air of FD Black People's Business. This is a good watch. Hazing in Black fraternities, the real story. Deep dive. That looks interesting. I'm going to bookmark that.
Of the entire industry. While in many ways Diddy is uniquely bad, specifically with his sex crimes,
also paying
understand that he is just a part
participate.
of a greater culture of exploitation. Almost all the celebrity record executives that we knew and loved during that era moved the exact same way. Jay-Z snaked Benny Siegel out of opportunities, to which Benny Siegel holds a grudge for to this day. Also, the way Jay-Z sold out Rockefeller Records under the nose of Dame Dash, who has really never recovered from this, is one of the dirtiest moves in the history of hip-hop.
Yeah, and I think when discussing Diddy, it is important to recognize, yes, this guy was a monster, okay? He did a lot of really heinous things, but we can't separate him from the culture at large. We have to examine the conditions, the way that someone like him was able to do what he did, and how he was propped up, and how he's far from he's not a singular evil, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I would make the comparison to how when we talk about Adolf Hitler, who was an evil man, okay? Like objectively an evil man, but that it's important to understand him not as this Not as like what a brave stance. Not as necessarily this unique evil, and not as like fascism belonging to just that of Nazi Germany. And therefore, when studying fascism and fascist leaders post-Nazi Germany, that people will always put it in the context of, well, they weren't as bad as Hitler, so why are we even calling, why are we calling this fascism? Why are we calling this, why are we making comparisons here? And it's because people look at, they look at someone like Hitler as, oh, this was just an anomaly, right? And anyway, so it is recognizing the harm and the scale of the harm that someone like P. Diddy was responsible for, but understanding the conditions that led to his rise, that protected him, that there have been others before him, there will be others after him if we do not fix this culture.
Of Cash Money Records fame is notorious for snaking people out of money. He and Lil Wayne aren't cool to this day because of unpaid funds.
And it's taught to us like Hitler got zapped into power one day. Yeah. That he just suddenly appeared. And anyway.
Baby not paying for real for the beat and what happened to that boy is low-key the butterfly effect of how we eventually get to the Drake versus Kendrick Lamar beef from earlier this year. Speaking of For Real, although he's quite beloved in the culture and is presented as one of the industry's good guys, when it comes to this exploitative practice, he's no different. Remember that whole beef between Beyonce and Khalees a couple of years ago when Beyonce dropped Renaissance and had a song sampling Khalees' voice on the album and tried to give her a feature credit, and Khalees got angry about it because she knew she wasn't getting paid from that feature, and she knew Beyonce knew this. Now, the way that eventually played out was wrong because Khalees started beefing with Beyonce when Khalees' real beef is with Pharrell, because Pharrell owns Khalees' publishing for most of her music up until a certain point, and right after that point is when Khalees quit doing music. And Khalees on numerous occasions fought and tried to sue Pharrell to get control of that publishing, which is all the money made off of her music, and he has refused up until this day, which is why Beyonce paid him instead of Khalees for her own voice. That issue of publishing and ownership is the hyper-capitalistic aspect of the music industry that has been around to this day. That's one of the reasons why it was low-key made a big deal of when Diddy gave people back their publishing a couple of years before all of this started to happen, probably because he knew that all of this was about to start happening. But the point here is to recognize that the exploitation of the women in this case is just a different category of the exploitation of everybody involved. Because exploitation is a core feature of this industry, artists create amazing art and the industry seeks ways to exploit that art to the fullest. And it'd be one thing if they just took a portion of the artist's earnings as a repayment for investing in them, or they paid a fee over the course of being on the label or something along those lines. But these record labels, going back to all those names I listed early on with Rakim, they don't just get money from their investment, they own the rights to the artist's music and publishing, meaning that those great songs that you love from your favorite artist, when you stream that, when you play it on a CD or a record, even if you're just going to a concert, even if you're going to a party and hearing a DJ play the music live, that money isn't going to those artists if those artists don't own their publishing rights. If they don't own that, they don't get money from it. And this is something that black artists...
he's making the point that this is an industry that is built on exploitation, that exploitation is so deeply ingrained in it that it's not just you get rid of Diddy and the exploitation goes away. Like, exploitation is... it props this industry up.
Artists have dealt with throughout American music history, going back to artists like Ma Rainey and Chuck Berry. Historically, black artists have always gotten the least out of their talent because the industry has always used the ignorance of those artists to the business of the industry against them. And particularly in hip hop, it's also used the desperation of the poverty. That same poverty that made hip hop possible in a lot of cases was used against those artists who were wanting to be rap stars, wanting to sign a deal so they could get some money so they could eat and get out the streets. And because people like Puff and Jay, and of course the bigger people above them at Sony, Universal, and Warner, these executives know that if they go find someone who is thirsty, like a Benny Siegel or a Saigon, or a Jay Kwan or Chingy or Gorilla Zoe or so many other folks that we don't think about but have made relevant, significant splashes in hip hop during that time period up till now. If those people are in the struggle and looking to eat, just like those same black women earlier, when they're in the struggle, looking to eat with nothing to lose, you can give them a little piece of anything and then have complete control over them in perpetuity. And that's the rappers. That's the people with a voice. Those are the people with followers. So imagine, or maybe don't imagine, what was happening behind the scenes, what is possible for the seemingly hundreds and in reality thousands of women and girls, and sometimes boys and men, caught up in the underbelly of this vicious industry.
Right. When the options presented are, you either take this deal and you are, you allow the exploitation, or you have nothing. There is no career, there is no money, there is no chance at this life. It's like sign or starve. Yeah. Sign or starve.
I want to end with a brief discussion of something that might come off a bit hokey, like a conspiracy theory, but it actually ends up leading me to a different point, something that Justin Hunt brought to my attention at the end of our conversation.
First of all, corporate America is made and built for white men. So when you're going into corporate America, usually your entryway is to help them with their diversity problem. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to open up doors. Sometimes you got to take that opportunity and get in. And so that's what I did with
Seat
Ciroc.
at the table.
But I told them I don't work for nobody. Everything in my portfolio I own. So you guys have to know my ultimate dream is a tequila.
The other side of it too is, there's real conversations around the Diageo situation, putting a different type of light on him.
Ever the chaser of the bag, the chaser of money, power, and respect, ever the party guy and promoter, ever the black capitalist, Puff did what many black capitalists have done before him. Something I talked about way back in my Black Conservatives video. He parlayed his access to us, his popularity amongst us, into big bucks for him, being the moneyed white power structures that he gained access to through his relationship with us. In 2007, he went into a partnership with Diageo, a multinational alcohol company that's worth nearly $80 billion and basically runs the alcohol industry. If you're drinking at a club, you're drinking something that they made. He will help them promote their struggling Ciroc label.
So what would be the best way to fix the music industry in your opinion? Well, ultimately what this comes down to is the issue with capitalism being inherently exploitative, so we can talk about transparency, we can talk about unions, we can talk about all that, but what is intertwined with the music industry, like all these industries, is that of capitalism, which is why FD has mentioned that repeatedly, and has made another video that is specifically about black capitalism and how that is a black capitalist, a black billionaire, a black person at the seat of the table is not going to fix the conditions for the masses, for the majority of the black community who are working class, who are the laborers, not the owners of said labor. But yeah, I mean, artists owning the means of their production. Does that sound familiar? Was wondering, as I want to be able to figure out ways to stop these exploitations in these industries. I mean, I don't have like one, there's no one easy answer here that I can give you, obviously workers, artists, laborers owning the means of their production is what, otherwise they continue to be exploited because they don't own it. The majority of the time, if you self-produce and do everything yourself, then you have complete control, but it's very much not a thing for everyone. Yeah, I mean, got to get rid of these predatory contracts. But again, it's like it comes down to exploitation being built into this industry because it is occurring underneath a capitalist society. So you also have an industry like music that is so competitive. It's so hyper competitive, and it only furthers that idea that like I have to be exploited. I have to allow, I can't do anything about this because that's how it goes, and also because it's so hard to even get into this position where I'm at now. Like when I was working at Sony, making no money and had a ton of responsibilities and was like, I deserved more than I was making. But the thing that I was constantly reminded of was that I was lucky to even have gotten that position, that there's 1,000 resumes that come in for this one position. And I was lucky to be the one who was even picked for it, that there are people who would do this for free to be able to get their foot in the door working at a major studio. Exploitation a default since it comes from the framework of capitalism. It's normal and people happily do it, even considering them successful after getting paid a fraction of what they deserve, sometimes for their entire lives. Yes, so that's even harder when you are talking about the music industry, the film industry, because it's so competitive and because it's this thing that a lot of people want to do because of what it can offer you, right? It can offer you fame, it can offer you power, it can offer you money, etc. It is to be a professional artist is a very difficult thing to accomplish. Exploiting people's passion for a field in order to pay them less. Yeah, and so that's an additional obstacle, Look at people like Beyonce. The second they are wealthy enough, they separate from record labels, publish on their own labels, and then but then they in turn sign others and do the same thing that was done to them. Hard to break the cycle when there's so much money to be made off the backs of others. Right. It is built into the system. Music labels are the capitalist gatekeepers of the music mainstream. Nothing gets that level unless artists pimp their creativity out to them, as well as whitewashing people power messages. But I guess, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to offer like, not there's the big solution, and then what are the things that we can do to make it better, right? There's making it better, and then there's the how do you fix it in a way that involves dismantling the system that creates that exploitation. So I'm big on unions. I'm big on labor organizing. I'm big on transparency with contracts, healthcare being provided, things like that, regulation. As like public education awareness, talking about things like abuse and how it is so, why it is so common, what does it look like, how to try and empower people.
label and get 50% of the proceeds. And of course, soon after this deal is done, you constantly see Diddy with Ciroc talking about Ciroc in Ciroc commercials. He is inseparable from the liquor, and Ciroc becomes a staple of hip hop high life aesthetics. And surely this makes Diddy a lot of money. However, this deal was a lot like the deals that Diddy signed his artists to. He did all the important work. Ciroc was nothing before.
Someone had a question about music unions. Separating acting and music. Acting has strong unions, right? You have SAG-AFTRA. The music industry lacks a union of the size and strength of SAG-AFTRA. So collective bargaining, protections, etc. It's much more difficult in the music industry, which is why exploitation is throughout the industry. Why, like, yes, there's exploitation in the film industry, but it is notorious in music because of something like lack of a strong union.
Him. But Diageo still owned Ciroc at the end of the day and made most of those proceeds. Diddy was just talent to them. And this didn't sit right with Diddy for obvious reasons, considering that he knows how talent is treated in the entertainment
business. Because a lot of musicians are
But
treated
people's
as
liquor
independent contractors, not
tastes
employees.
changed, right? So tequila became the hot thing. So Diddy goes and buys De Leon. I know you've seen Diddy push De Leon in recent years.
Yeah.
So he's pushing De Leon tequila, and he owned half of it, and Diageo owned the other half, right? And so Diageo is in charge of distribution and manufacturing of the business. And they were really upset that Diddy was so successful with Ciroc. They went from selling 40,000 cases of Ciroc a year to 2.2 million a year, right? So,
wow. So being the black capitalist, Diddy buys his own liquor company, De Leon, and then gets into another partnership with Diageo to do the same thing for De Leon as Ciroc. He would use, again, his access to us, his popularity due to us to build up his own liquor company that he owned, and then would just use Diageo to produce it and give them a cut of his business. And this would be a sure shot because he had started a whole wave of celebrity endorsed liquor. His presidents
Ciroc
opened
good?
that
I
door,
fucking
and
hate
like
Ciroc.
years after, you see George Clooney's Casamigos garnering $1 billion on its sales. There's no reason Puffy couldn't have got it more.
And I'm a vodka drinker. I love vodka, and I hate Ciroc.
But he noticed things didn't quite go the same as they did with Ciroc. Diddy wasn't seeing the same results or enthusiasm behind him promoting a liquor that he personally owned coming from Diageo. And after some investigation, Diddy decides that he needs to go ahead and make something happen. So he sues them.
No, Clooney owned Casamigos with Cindy Crawford's husband. Can't remember his name. They owned it, and then they sold it. And they made a lot of money.
For racial discrimination and failure to own up to their end of the business deal they signed with. Surely you see the irony here. Diddy was subtly on the opposite end of the type of business practices that he had participated in for decades. He was fine exploiting other black people on behalf of white businesses. But when Diddy seemingly got too big for his britches, the same white power structure did exactly to him what he was doing to niggas on his label. What we have firsthand is the limit of how far one could actually go playing the dirty game of being a black capitalist. But Diddy did not stop there.
What vodka do I like? I'm a Grey Goose drinker, but here's a little secret. If you like Grey Goose, but you don't want to pay for the Grey Goose prices, Costco's Kirkland vodka is actually pretty similar. And I think it has something to do with it being, I think it's like either produced in the same place. Like it has, it's essentially the same formula. It's off label. It's like if you go to, you go to Walgreens and rather than buying Dayquil, you buy the non-brand. You buy the Walgreens brand. But yeah, it's made in the same factory. So that's something that I learned recently was like Kirkland vodka if you like Grey Goose.
Because this lawsuit became his thing for the last few years.
The taste testers
he
at
went
Costco
on a
couldn't
black
tell the
excellence,
difference.
black wealth crusade. To his credit, doing what everybody says getting you an LLC is supposed to do. Diddy was pushing the envelope and trying to go beyond the natural limitations of black capitalism, always being under white capitalism, y'all. Just I did a whole video about this. Go watch that video. Anyway, he was trying to own something massive to put him on the same level as the corporations that had always had the real power over him. He attempted to buy BET from Paramount. He tried a black cannabis business. He started the Revolt Network and a few other ventures. And anytime a mic got close to his face, he would speak to black people not selling their wealth, not giving up their resources to white businesses, and saying that black people need to come together and build this wealth so that they could all get free.
We got to start with us stepping up and really taking the responsibility and accountability to be a part of this political movement. People don't really know me. Like, I'm blessed that I have the money to start this political party. I'm not gonna make no apologies for how much cake I get, you know? That has empowered me, but I know once I get it, I'm going to fund the revolution. I'm a black nationalist. I'm unapologetically black. I have to take care of the tribe first.
I didn't know that Diddy is going to be funding the revolution.
Which is not just false, but highly ironic coming from this man. And I was the only one to recognize that, as these words were immediately targeted by his former victims in the hip hop world, of which he owned their resources and wealth and had built his wealth off of their labor. People like Mace scoffed at his hypocrisy. How could he sit there talking about black wealth coming together when he's literally stealing it from other black people? And I just have to point out, the truth is that's how it's always worked. But I don't have time to get into it. Please just check out the Jay-Z section of my Black Conservatives video for more details there.
He files that suit. Diageo tries to settle it in arbitration. They just want to do a closed door, figure out some deal with it, right? And they release a statement saying that Diddy saying that we're racist is damaging to our brand. It's costing us $1 billion in reputational risk. So the judge decides, no, we're going to take this to trial, and it's going to be a public trial. And then the next month, the Cassie thing happens. And then that January after Cassie, he settles whatever with Diageo. It's one thing with the people that he's hanging out with and partying with, but Diageo is owned by BlackRock and Vanguard.
Yeah, and it's one thing I've talked about in a lot of my more political videos. Like, niggas think they ain't niggas until they really try to fuck with the actual ain't niggas.
Until they try to become the bank.
Unfortunately, or really predictably, we'll never know if Diddy was going to be able to make the possible impossible in his crusade to buy into the highest tiers of our capitalist system. It's not long after Diddy filed his suit against Diageo that the accusations from Cassie and other women start coming in. And it's not long after that Diddy settled his lawsuit out of court with this giant billionaire company. Now, I know that sounds scarily close to he was trying to buy NBC. I know. I'm not trying to do that. People said that about Bill Cosby. It was nonsense then, it's nonsense now. Diddy, much like Cosby, had a significant documented history of his violence abuse. I'm not in any way trying to undermine that. We literally have video evidence of this abuse. But I do think it would be cool if that was the case. As I said earlier, Diddy, like many a black capitalist, made his money off us, and he used that to go further and further as a mogul and a businessman to icon status. And all the while, it seemed like everyone was well aware of what he was actually doing in front and behind the scenes. And the harm he was doing was fine as long as he was a powerful man harming people who deserved it, those without power, hungry rappers trying to escape street life, young women looking to be stars, girls just looking for a good time. All people that Diddy did not have to treat as equals or even as humans, all because of who he was, which was attached to us, and we watched it all in silent agreement. But as soon as Puff mistakenly thought that this power rivaled the real juggernauts in the business world that he was emulating, he was quickly shown that no matter how much money he made, no matter the amount of money he spent on mansions or yachts or luxury items or shiny suits, he was still just a nigga from Mount Vernon. So yeah, if this were some type of setup from Diageo, it would low-key be poetic justice. It's a useful reminder to the reality of how this system actually works and why no amount of placating this system, or in the case of Diddy, imitating this system, is ever truly going to work for black people. There's a lot of speculation that Puffy might possibly end up exposing others as he falls down, that many a celebrity or maybe even a politician has participated in a freak off. And to that I ask, who did Epstein take down? Who did Weinstein take down? And you might say, you know, politicians and billionaires and princes are different than a couple of rappers and R&B artists, and that's true to an extent, but to create that type of ripple effect really is incompatible with how this system is designed to work. The point of this video is to hopefully get you watching to recognize that the goal for the people that benefit the most from this exploitative system that Diddy took advantage of is for us to hyper-focus on him as the only villain in the industry, to look at his downfall as evidence that the system can be fixed and govern itself, that fundamentally all of these systems work and it's just a few bad apples. The history shows
a few bad apples.
us it's not just a few, it's more like a cycle. And this cycle perpetuates itself on its ability to cast off one of its worst actors so that everyone else gets to keep moving unencumbered. We're talking about a culture of violence and exploitation, and Diddy is the results of that. He's the okie doke. He's a bait and switch. This is much bigger than Puff. It's bigger than hip hop. This is, once again, the American way.
He is a symptom, not a cause.
It's bigger than